Carson music playing or something. All right. Good evening, everybody. So, for all of you who will be coming in, this is going to be a lot of fun tonight. Look at, I'm talking to a New Jersey person, and I just said use. So there you go. It's already happening. So welcome in, folks. I'm absolutely just like chuffed to have our guest on tonight. You can see everybody's banner. This is Derek Bain, author, baseball sim fanatic, man of the world, and resident of New Jersey. So we're going to be talking all things, baseball sims, whatever, guys. It's going to be a fun journey. And on behalf of all of you, I really, really want to thank you, Derek, for coming on tonight. And Derek, go ahead and say hi to the billions and billions. People are filtering in a little bit now. So go ahead.
Well, hello. How are you?
There we go.
Right.
That's it. And now you'd like to thank the Academy.
Yes. Yeah, I have a list of people I want to thank here. So
nice.
Good evening, folks. How are you?
All right. That was good. So I just start out, you guys, just to Derek brings a perspective that many of us don't. And, so I put there on the tin, this man is an author and goes deep into all of these things, baseball, the history of baseball, gaming. He's a huge baseball fan. And so having him on here and being able to talk about just kind of his journey as a baseball gamer, what led him to go really, really deep down the proverbial rabbit hole, I think is going to be fascinating. And even if we talk about games that maybe you guys don't play, I still think that and nothing here is rehearsed. As you guys know me, I don't rehearse anything unless I'm doing a magic show. Then that's different. But anything that we're talking about tonight, I think is going to be, there's kind of going to be a sort of meta conversation that I think you can take and maybe apply to whatever game engine you're using, whether that's cards or dice or digital. So I guess the best way to begin the journey is, like Winnie the Pooh said, is with the first step. So Derek, the most obvious question in the world, here it comes. What was your very first baseball game that you played? What was it? I'm just curious.
I'm going to say that it was probably Major League Baseball in television.
Wow.
Or
okay.
Home Run on the Atari.
Awesome. So the Intellivision, that was a Don Daglow creation, right?
The Major League Baseball was not.
But the Intellivision was, right?
Intellivision. So let me take a step back a minute. Intellivision was the first system that I had.
Okay.
We got it in, I'm going to say probably Christmas of '81.
Okay.
And we wound up with about 20 some odd games for the system. Eventually, over a 2-3 year period, Major League Baseball being one of them. That was actually programmed by Dave Rolfe, who actually wrote the executive program for the Intellivision. So actually, like the brains of the system. But he needed a game to kind of, see if the commands and the executive were doing what he wanted them to do. So he wrote baseball kind of in tandem with that. So where Don Daglow comes in is actually Don wrote the very first interactive computer baseball simulation back in 1971. So that while he was at Pomona College, and he was working on that for quite a while on and off. He wound up at Mattel as one of the first, I think one of the first 5 hires when they opened up the Mattel Electronics for the programming side of things. And he wrote Utopia game, which some folks are probably familiar with. It's like the first simulation game on a console. So anyway, Don eventually moved up at Mattel, and he hired Eddie Dombrower.
There's a name.
All right. So Eddie comes in, and Don's like, "Hey, I have this idea. I want to create a baseball game that looks, kind of like baseball looks on TV." and the result of that was World Series Major League Baseball. Great game for that time frame. The problem is that it came out probably 6 months or less before the crash of the video games in late '83.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it sold too many copies, but it used the IntelliVoice. So the umpire, would say, you're out, and different things, and it worked with the computer component that they came out with, so you could save your lineups and do all sorts of stuff that you probably wouldn't expect to do in 1983.
No, that's huge,
on
right?
a console, right?
Sure.
So anyway, so I had the Intellivision. Major League Baseball, for its time, was definitely leaps and bounds ahead of like Home Run and baseball games for like the Odyssey and Astrocade and those types of systems.
You're going way back here. Yeah.
Yeah, the Wayback Machine, right?
Love it. Love it. I'm a retro gamer, so I love it.
So 83, my birthday in 1983, so I'm turning 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I come home and my father's sitting here typing away on something. I'm like, what's that? And he's like, this is your birthday gift. It's a Commodore 64.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, okay, this is cool. So eventually wound up, I think probably the first baseball game I had on that was Star League Baseball.
Star League Baseball. That was Epix, I believe, made that. I think. Was that Epix?
I'm going to say GameStar.
Okay.
And eventually, I think they came out with a sequel called Championship Baseball. Baseball. So anyway, but that was like arcade only. That was just like an action game.
Mm-hmm.
I think at some point I got my hands on the kind of the granddaddy of them all as far as the computer sim side, which is Computer Baseball by Strategic Simulations Incorporated.
Mm-hmm.
That one came out in '81. I think for like the Apple and probably the Atari 8-bit stuff. And then there was a port to the Commodore 64. So I had that, played that a bit. But then I think I really went down the rabbit hole when Micro League Baseball came out.
And what a great game. John, Aaron, thanks for joining us, and everybody else watching in. So yeah, Micro League Baseball. So I remember seeing scans of the magazines and stuff like that, and seeing Sparky Anderson endorsing Micro League Baseball, and you knew that it had to be serious. And I thought we could maybe spend a little time with Micro League Baseball. Mike Silva joining us. Hey, Mike, got Derek on with us, and I'm going to be showing his website, everything coming up, to talk a little bit about Micro League Baseball. People look back on it now and they say it's kind of quaint. But if you remember, for those of you that have had a Commodore 64, right? So you looked at that boot screen. There was 38K free after Microsoft Basic loaded in. And what still amazes me to this day is really how good that game is, and what they were able to squeeze into a very, very limited architecture. Yeah, I was just wondering if you might want to share some cool memories about Micro Leagues. I know a lot of guys here know it. Yes. In fact, Mike says it was his first.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, that was the one I really kind of dug my heels into and started playing. And that whole 1984 time frame is when I started following Major League Baseball.
Mm-hmm.
My cousins were playing Little League, so I kind of got into the whole baseball thing at that point.
Okay.
So you have the Micro League game disc, and then you have the add-ons, which were the General Manager owner disc, and the other one was the box score stat compiler. So that kind of really separated it from some of those other games. In the GM owner disc, you could trade players, you could create your own teams, you could edit your rosters, release players, the whole 9 yards, right?
Oh, it was brilliant. Just brilliant.
And box score stat compiler, obviously, you're compiling your stats at the end of the game. So that was kind of a game changer as well. But yeah, there's there's one, it's a generic stadium. After you play it for about 10 minutes, you can pretty much figure out where the hits are going to fall or be caught, or that that kind of thing. But
oh yeah.
But great.
But it was
great
cool
games
seeing
for
the
time.
names, right? And the play-by-play was pretty nice for its time,
Yeah.
especially. In fact,
Yep.
Mike here says that he uses the 1987 team discs to play games in his replay, and he uses digital diamond to track stats, so people still playing the game. David Baseball Demos, welcome in. He says you do not sound like the Bain from Batman. So, and if you didn't know that, you know now. And David says that his first game was one you already mentioned, was strategic, the one put out by SSI, which was SSI, right, known for sort of D&D games and stuff, and war games, and wow, they did a baseball game,
They did a baseball game, and they eventually published the first 2 Tony La Russa games.
You're right, they did. I have them, but it didn't click.
Yeah,
it didn't click. So yeah, guys, this is just kind of a freewheeling conversation. We're going to be showing some things off here in a minute. Mike here says that the coolest thing about MicroLeague on an emulator is you can play 200% speed if you want to quick send a game. That's true. So later on, when I really got into kind of retro gaming heavily, a friend of mine actually wrote a thing that kept standings for it and stuff like that. He's a computer programmer and fellow musician. But like you, I just, when I got that, right, because there was, later on you had the arcadey type games or even the sort of sim games, but it seemed that MicroLeague Baseball, and I would also argue Full Count, although they didn't have the advertising muscle or whatever to go on big full color ads in the back, really, really important, because it for me as a baseball fan, and I've been a baseball fan all my life. And when I was a kid, I was even into dead ball baseball. I'm such a geek. But I always dreamed of being able to sort of create this baseball world. And MicroLeague was the first one to really allow me to do that. And I remember, Derek, having back then, so the Macmillan encyclopedia, or Total Baseball, those hernia-inducing things.
Right.
On my lap, and I'm feverishly typing in players. To play in MicroLeague. Yes. I mean, it's pretty sad, but it's pretty nice in a way too. It's good memories. Good memories.
Oh, I still have some of these. Yeah, the Sports Encyclopedia.
By David Neff.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. No, definitely. That's what I started doing. But like you said, it wasn't. We were talking earlier. Not just. I'm going to plug in the 1983 season. Like I started, all right, I want to put in the, all-time great Angel team, or, the whatever greats from the last 10 years or something. So just started really messing with either what came with the game, or just, the ability to enter your own stats in was just kind of mind-blowing to me. So
same. It was an absolute game changer, pardon the bad pun. David Lando, welcome in. So guys, first thing, we're going to take off the graphic here. Well, first we'll actually just bring up this website first. So we're going to go deep. So one and I was telling Derek before we came on, I knew about him before I knew about him. So just popped up on Facebook. I'm like, oh my God, I know who this guy is. So Derek isn't just like, this is author, historian, gamer, the whole thing. And so we're going to be going through a lot of what's going on his website. I'm going to be putting a link here for you guys a little while later in the chat. But first thing let's talk about here is this is really, really fun, I think, is Hardball Retro's compendium of baseball video games and electronic handhelds. As you guys can see here, you can see there's La Russa is up there, Hardball, High Heat. God, I loved High Heat, especially when I learned you could just play it as a manager. Then I truly fell in love with that. But all the cool handhelds. So Derek, for most of us, right, we play, a bunch of baseball sims. Cars, whether you're Cars Dice Guy or digital or both. But you went like further than just about anybody. You wrote books about this. What compelled you to write this wonderful book about the history of baseball video games? Because it's a fascinating subject, and for an author to commit himself to something like that, what drove that? I'm curious.
Well, and first of all, let me just state that my co-author John Racanelli did all of the work on the handheld stuff.
All right, thank you, John, out there in the ether, wherever you are, my friend.
Yes, I invited him to this. Hopefully, he shows up at some point.
I hope he does.
John, I met John at Saber Convention in Chicago, and we were going to do a little. We're going to set up a table in the exhibitors room with. I had several laptops. A couple of our other committee members had some card and dice games. So we figured we'd have a little display, and I had, at some point I would have Baseball for Windows running and have Ernie broadcasting a game, and then I'd fire up Old Time Baseball, and Mel Allen would broadcast and so forth, right? So and if somebody wanted to play for an inning or something, we had these games set up. So in discussion on that, John had written a couple articles for our website, which is Saber Baseball Gaming, and about some of the handhelds that he had, and he's like, "Well, I'm based out of Chicago, or I'm in the area. I'll be at the convention, and I can bring, some of my collection there." I was like, "Perfect." So his collection was probably the star of the show. He had the Coleco baseball, Mattel baseball.
John's here. John's here. Let's invite him.
Yeah.
So please go ahead.
Hey, John. So yeah, John, if you want to speak on some of the items in your collection there, the starting lineup game.
Yeah, John, feel free. Just click the link that I just put in the chat, and we'll get you on here. You just need a mic. We're not using a webcam or anything like that, because I would scare people away. Go ahead, Derek, please. So, yeah. John, you're welcome to join. Please do.
Yeah. So we had a lot of fun with that. People would come up. I think a lot of them were like, "Oh my God, the Mattel handheld! I haven't seen one of these in like 40 years or something." And they would play an inning on it or whatever. But so we had a lot of fun with that. And then I don't know, maybe a few months after that, I started thinking about, well, we're coming up on like 50 years of baseball video games and handhelds and different things, and there's no real, you can go to Moby Games and kind of do a search and maybe, try to pull something from there. But I said, I don't really know that there's, when I write a book, it's something like, I would like to read this, or I would like to have this, I'm kind of a list guy. So,
sure.
I would like a list of, all the baseball games that were ever created, and, some information from the reviews, and what people thought of them, what the ratings were. And
let's bring John on while you're talking.
So, go ahead.
He's in the green room.
All right. Bring him
John,
in.
it's great to meet you. I'm gonna have to change the team, and being half Italian, I gotta say welcome aboard, Paisan. How you doing?
Hey, it's good to be here. Thanks.
All right.
Hey, John.
How's it going, Derek?
Good. Yeah, good timing. So yeah, I don't. If you want to chime in on some of the handhelds, and then I can talk about the video game side of the book. But
yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I really loved the handheld stuff. One of the first games I had was the Entex baseball, and even the box, the way that they marketed the game, it said no TV required. So as much as I also played the Atari home run version and Super Baseball and so forth, Real Sports Baseball, but being able to have the ability to play baseball under my sheets, play it in the car, was just mind-blowing. So that was what really got me into it, was the Entex baseball. And from there, I just kind of went on a journey kind of in the late 90s when eBay started kind of collecting these games back up. And when Derek and I were able to meet at the Saber convention in Chicago, it was just a blast. And it was so fun to see what he was into, the computer simulation games, which I really had not really done much with at all. But
Mm-hmm.
to see people both interested in that type of electronic gaming, handheld gaming, video gaming with console systems, I mean, just was really cool. So I'm really excited that Derek asked me to help with the book. It was a lot of fun.
And it's just great. I mean, you guys got to get these. You got to get this book. It's fantastic. And I think all of us that are in here and anybody watching, listening in later, I think one of the big things, and whether you're playing this as playing baseball computer or handhelds, whatever, there's I mean, baseball's got nostalgia built into it, and that's why I think these guys, John and Derek, really just hit it out of the park with what they've got here. Because you go back and revisit these things. I mean, you guys are, talking about you remember exactly the baseball games that you had, what you played, what you're using it for. If you're Mike Silva, you're still playing, and I think it's brilliant that you guys got together and did this, because I think not only is it about nostalgia, it's important. I think that what you guys have done here is really, just great stuff. And, John, I'm really, really very, very happy that Derek invited you on here. And there they are. There's the two outlaws right on the screen too. So if you guys want to have a look there. So John, you said that you haven't done a lot. You didn't do a lot of, like, as far as computer baseball, but for handhelds. Just curious, like, for you, what was your because it seemed to me was well, let me back up. So when you guys met up, was this kind of like a conversation that just sort of happened? Let's write a book. Let's do this history. I'm just kind of curious how you two converged in that, how that worked together. If either of you could speak on that, because I think it's cool.
It was really more Derek's idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I was maybe not well into writing the video game side of the book, but I was pretty far into at least compiling the list of games and thinking about creating a survey so I could get people's feedback and stuff. Yeah, I think that might have been around the time when either John was posting an article or doing something, and a light bulb went off, and I was like, this would be an excellent addition to this. Kind of the other side of this book is, yeah, they're not video games, but they're baseball. They're baseball games, and that's really part of what we try to do with the committee, the Saber Gaming Games and Simulations Committee. Is we're not trying to be like, oh, we're only cards and dice, or we're only video games,
Mm-hmm.
or we're only handhelds. Like, if you have a baseball, like a pinball game or whatever it is, it's a game. It's baseball. Come out and tell us about it. So we're trying to be as inclusive as we can with that kind of stuff. But
nice, like that. Good evening, Corey. Welcome in. We got John Racanelli and we got Derek Bain here, and we're talking baseball handhelds, baseball computer games, all the fun stuff. So come in, man. So from the time how long did it actually take you guys to get the book to where it's like, this is ready? I mean, how long of a process was this, years wise? How did you work? I mean, just kind of interested in the process too. Because you're coming at this from sort of one way of baseball gaming. John's coming from another, and I'm just kind of interested if you guys wouldn't mind talking a little bit about the sort of collaborative process, how that worked for you guys, if there was one.
Yeah, no, I know. From my perspective, it was kind of like, hey, John, would you write the handheld section? I didn't.
Okay.
I have no reference point other than I've seen the Mattel game. I've played the starting lineup game a handful of times at a friend's house. I really didn't have anything to go on, and I knew that John had a collection, so I kind of definitely leaned on John to do that section. It was that was basically all him. And
Nice.
and then the baseball, the video games, console and computer and arcade. That was stuff that I had been working on for a while.
Okay.
Anyway, it probably overall was maybe a little over a year for the whole thing.
Well, you guys put together one hell of a book. You really did, and I hope you're both proud of it, because it is, Derek and John, amazing stuff. Todd B has a question for you, John. He said he asks, is there one baseball handheld game that is pretty rare, and are these games worth money today?
That's a good question. There are going to be, probably, if you looked on eBay right now, hundreds of Mattel available. You're going to find a lot of Coleco. You're going to find a lot of Entex. There's a lot of games that are much more rare, but mostly because the games were not very fun to play. One of the games that I put an article on the Saber Games and Simulations Committee blog about is made by a company called Amico. And Amico was a subsidiary of Kidda, who makes fire alarms. And the game sounds like a fire alarm. It is awful. It is so not fun to play. But it's those games that are like the rare ones that are not fun to play, that are tough to find, that may be worth some money, especially like a lot of toys if you find them in a box. But I think if you're interested in playing a game and you're looking for a used working copy, you could usually find a Mattel or a Coleco or Entex or one of the popular ones on eBay for probably $20-$25 or less. So
Nice.
It's really easy to get into, but be careful, because if you buy one or two, you might end up like me and you want every single one that was ever made.
See, John, even though you come from the handheld side, you've got the same addiction as the rest of us.
Exactly.
And I love that, and I love the idea. And guys, what I brought up here was something that was just referenced here, was the Saber Games and Simulations Committee. We'll get these guys to talk about this. But what I want to point out, if I may, I'll take the stage here just for a second. I'm always talking about inclusivity here. That I want cards and dice guys to feel at home here, even though, for obvious, I've explained the reasons why I don't do cards and dice on this channel. I don't have the room, and I have 2 cats, and it would be even more of a train wreck than it usually is. But if you look at this banner here from Saber, you've got everything. Look, man, we've got some handheld stuff here. We've got product pictures from Strat, cards and dice. We've got old computer games. There's baseball for Windows, everything. And so the idea, and this is so perfect that John was able to join tonight too, because handhelds are an area that we really don't talk a lot about in the community, and we've all played them, but it's nice to have this perspective as well. And so, I hope you have some questions. Todd, thank you for your question. I know that these guys be willing to field questions in their areas of expertise. And but so this is really, really cool. And maybe I hand this back over to you guys to talk a little bit about the Saber Games and Simulations Committee. I was very honored. A few of the things that because Derek had asked me, hey, can we put a couple of your games up there? I'm like, yeah, hell yeah. They're a train wreck, but go ahead.
Yeah, so actually that section that you're on just there, the game playthrough videos, scroll down a little bit.
Yeah, sure thing.
That every time you refresh the page or you land on that page, it'll show you 3 random playthrough videos out of, I don't know, and yours would be among the ones that we have there, but we have from like the 30/30 Club. We have probably, I don't know, 10 or 12 different people that allowed me to put some of their videos up here. So, if you just want like a random sampling of different things, there's card and dice, there's tutorials, all sorts of stuff there. And then if you don't mind scrolling up a bit back to
not at all
near the top, the upcoming events.
Oh, right. Because we see here something. There was a past event, Derek and John, Hardball Retros. Yeah. So
we had that. And then we had Mike Cislinski from Dynasty League.
Oh, cool. There we go.
Scott Corlander, Batflip Dynasty. So we try to get a guest on once per month.
Okay.
We do about 60 to 90 minutes and let them do either a demo of their game or a kind of a slideshow presentation, and then we keep the last half of the show for like a Q&A. So yeah,
There we go. Here's upcoming.
we've had Dave Cook from Action. We've had John Herson from APA, and Don Daglow, Eddie Dombrauer, Clay Dresslow from Baseball Mogul, Mark Cohen, Digital Diamond.
Wow.
I'm sure I'm forgetting some folks. I apologize. Some of the Card and Dice guys. Sorry, the names are escaping me at the moment. But anyway, if you go to the events link, you can see past events, and you've got the upcoming events there. So in our book, we actually very late in the process, I reached out to Nate Edwards, who's going to be our guest on April 10th. Nate is kind of the guru. He does the 30/30 Club on YouTube. His channel is 30/30 Club. But he kind of specializes in the Japanese baseball video games, which I wasn't aware of, like 95% of these. And I was debating whether to have him write a section, but it was going to make the book a bit too thick, and it was going to delay the publication of it. So I decided just to ask Nate to provide some screenshots and a list of Japanese baseball games for me.
Nice.
So they're in the book, but just not, I really haven't, they're not broken down with the, the comments and the ratings and all that stuff, but at least there's a list of them. I think there's some overlap with them, at least, especially back in the 80s and 90s. There were games that were produced in Japan, and then they were ported over to, either the NES, Super Nintendo, Genesis, and so forth, and just given, an Americanized name, and but basically they're the same game. I don't have the reference points as to which game translates into which title on the Japanese side and vice versa, but so hopefully Nate's going to go into some detail on that for us on April 10th. And then Steve Etzel, he's on May 8th. What he does is he kind of deconstructs past tabletop baseball games, a lot of the ones that are out of print, and he rebuilds player cards for those games.
Oh, wow.
So he's going to kind of do a deep dive on that for us.
That's gonna be fascinating. I'm a Saber member, so I should just be able to just jump right into this, I'm guessing. So
actually,
or is this a separate membership than Saber?
No membership at all. You don't.
Nice.
You don't even have to be a Saber member to
cool.
register for the meetings. So
okay, guys. So
it's kind of one of those things to pull you in.
All right. You should be if you should be Saber members. Damn it. Anyhow. So, but yeah, if this is a way to do it, this looks just incredible. And Derek, you mentioned something that I think would interest these guys too, about how they can sort of contribute things.
Yes. So yeah, you can definitely, if you register for an account where it says user access there, if you register for an account, you can create your own articles up on the website here. And we actually, one of the categories is replay results. So I post my own things. Some of the other contributors will post results from their Card and Dice replays, or from their computer gaming stuff. So it's kind of one of those things we added so people can share what they're currently working on, or hey, I just finished this a replay of whatever season, or
So, John, I wanted to ask you, because we're seeing, that sort of things kind of always, what's been around comes back around again. And so I use the Rubik's Cube for an example. So, Rubik's Cubes have kind of made a comeback. Everybody knows what they are again, which is really, really cool. As a magician, I actually can do things with unfaked Rubik's Cube, like literally take a mixed up Rubik's Cube, shake it in 1 second, it's solved. There's a sleight of hand involved, but it can be done. But the thing is, do you see where handhelds could make a comeback? Because it seems like that, right? There's something very cool about them in the respect that in one way they're kind of an abstract thing, but another way there is, because maybe you're not setting lineups, maybe you're not doing some of the things that you could do, say like in a game, even that came, games around the same time as say Micro League that we managed. But do you foresee a time when with updated technology where these things could again be a thing? Because I they were fun. I have fond memories of playing them like forever and ever and ever. Just curious, or what your thoughts might be on that. I know I'm asking you to be a futurist here, but go for it. Yeah.
For a while, actually, the Mattel game was redesigned and resold as Mattel Baseball Classic. So
Cool.
if you're looking for that game on eBay, you may find a version that says Classic on it. So that's the updated. It's not the retro version.
Nice.
I kind of think that at least for people of my age, being in my 50s, somebody that grew up with these games and with early consoles, that the advent of a handheld phone in your pocket, I think probably, unless they were to do a port of Mattel Baseball for your phone, and maybe that exists already, but I kind of feel like a single purpose game, when you've got Game Boys and things like that too, I'm not so sure that unless there's a market for aging people that are baseball fans that are looking for the nostalgia of it, that it really comes back. But there's so many other options for baseball gaming and baseball simulations that you do on your phone or with a laptop that, I'm not so sure.
It's because they're fun. I mean, come on, you've said you've collected so many, your expertise in this for, and writing this book, having this, and I remember them. They were just so much fun, and I kind of just create, and there was so much there for the imagination that you kind of could create what you wanted in your mind, obviously, but just great stuff, and love the way they look too. I love the looks of some of the handhelds that I remember, and then some of the pictures that I've just seen just on Derek's site and elsewhere. Because in a way we have, it'd be interesting to see something like that, because I was thinking as you were talking just generally about handheld, right? Well, there's a version of Out of the Park Baseball that I've got installed on an Android tablet. Can take it anywhere, and it's fun, and I can just play it, So I'm hoping that there would be, because maybe I'm hoping that there will be a kind of maybe a renaissance, if you will, because again, I think equally is important, because it was you were bringing baseball gaming, right? Again, that what was it? No television needed, right? You're bringing that, and it kind of, they were a nice alternative, and I think for families too that couldn't afford. Commodores were never terribly expensive, but even so, right? It's like, okay, you're going to go out, or else, hey, here you go. Here's this really fun baseball game that you can play, and I'm so glad that you guys met up and decided to, okay, these are both very, very important, because it brought baseball to gamers everywhere, especially those of us that couldn't hit a curveball and decided better go into show business or something else, because I couldn't hit a curve to save my life, man. It was awful. Now I'm lucky if I can hit the side of, well, anything. So guys, Derek's comment about being able to, so Tim, I'm thinking of you. Clee Baseball Fan 879 has just done a strat project. Gaylord Perry. So his replays aren't season replays, so we're kind of getting into a little segue here. He doesn't necessarily do straight up season replays as much as he had this idea of focusing on pitchers. And what's really cool about this is you still get a sense of what the season was, but you're focusing on this particular pitchers, or in the case of the Clory Kluber, Rick Porcello, I have to say it in Italian, I'm sorry, Rick Porcello replays, was that you had a sense of the season, but focusing on the teams. And so, Tim, I think this would be a great place for you certainly. Sports Time Machine, if you're hearing this later. David, Baseball Demos, you're here. You guys ought to consider this, because I do know that I'll see posts from you guys, or, whether it's in Discords or other social media platforms. But this is something that's really focused and wonderful. And I'm so just grateful that you brought this up, both you guys. Appreciate it. So here's the segue. As far as doing like kind of we always have this discussion on here, and I'm not putting you on the spot, Derek, so let me be clear about that as well. That with the advent of really games like Full Count, which, by the way, update coming up in April, guys, Micro League Baseball, things like that, where you could kind of create to steal from Out of the Park Baseball, an infinite baseball playground or infinite baseball sandbox. Derek, you and I talked a little bit before that you and I have a commonality, and that our entrance into baseball game, I thought I was the only one, that we got into it first digitally. And you said you've just kind of started scratching the surface of cards and dice. I played for a bit, quite a bit in my undergrad days, but I was already a digital gamer. So, but I wanted to talk to you a little bit, and John too. I don't know how much baseball gaming you do. Certainly feel free. So I want both of you, if you would please, when you're thinking of a project, like, what are some of the things that guide you, Derek? Because I have like really weird ideas, but I want to hear other weird ideas. If you won't mind talking about that a bit.
Sure.
And then we'll get back into some more focused gaming and whatever you'd want to talk about then. But just kind of setting a little stage here.
So I guess a lot of this stuff, I've kind of settled on a sweet spot of like a 5-year, I call them half-decade universes or libraries or whatever you want to call them.
Okay.
It's kind of like the sweet spot. So when the first book that I wrote was Hardball Retrospective. And that one, just as a quick summary, it's basically a what if. And it's what if you put everybody back on the first team that they signed a professional MLB contract with. And how would what would the results be, right? So it basically is, what was the acumen of the front offices of the different teams throughout the years, right? In drafting and signing international free agents or what have you. So I started creating some libraries based off of that. And when I did single season, I ran into the problem of certain teams were better than others at finding players at every position, or basically there would be several teams as I'd be generating the rosters, and there would be a team with one catcher or no catchers, or missing a third baseman. I remember the San Francisco Giants of the 60s and 70s having like 17 great outfielders and like hardly any good pitchers, and different things like that. So how do you account for that? I started if I had people that didn't make the 40-man roster of those teams, I would have a section on my spreadsheet called fill-ins, and I would plug those guys into the teams that were missing the catcher or the third baseman or what have you. It's not very satisfying to me, though, to have somebody who wasn't actually on that team appear on that roster. So that was the single season dilemma that really wasn't working out for me. So when I did a 5-year, there's still some glitches, but for the most part, it kind of filters those out. It's like in 5 years, you must have found a catcher, right? So
sure.
And I like to make sure there's 2 catchers, for injury, or if whatever sim you're using has injuries enabled, or
right,
for playing time. If you have 2 guys with 30 at bats, well, that's not really going to work out well either. But generally the 5-year seems to work for me. So that's what I try to do. So this basically based off of this book, I came up with two different teams. There's the originals, which are the guys that basically all the guys that I dumped onto their first team. I called them the originals, and then I had the actuals, which is the actual rosters from those seasons. So I kind of do a comparison in the book on those. I started plugging them into different sims and seeing what the results were. The second book I did, Hardball Retroactive, there's a number of different chapters in there, various baseball topics, but one of the ones I came up with was the Retro World Baseball Classic. I'm guessing around the time that I was writing that the World Baseball Classic was going on, and I was like, well, this just started in, or I forget what year it started, but it was relatively recent, right? Mid, well, maybe about 2012, 2015, somewhere around there. So my thought was like, well, what if we went back in time and we created World Baseball Classic rosters based on where guys were born? So I kind of try to come up with ideas like that, just to kind of mix and match. All the guys who were born in California are on one team, and
Right.
all the New York born or the Northeastern guys, and you got the Southeast, so you got the Florida, Georgia team and the Texas team, and then there's like a Caribbean team and so forth.
So I know that as you're talking about this, I'm thinking about Action PC Baseball because it's got sets like that, which is really cool. And you'd mentioned the 5-year franchises. I didn't know if you've been around when I'd mentioned Steve Tate's 5-year franchise files. They're free. You should grab them. I'll put a link or something. And so make me think about that. And I wish Steve was on here. You guys would. This is right up his alley as well. Richard Atone, welcome, Paisan. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for greeting everybody, saying hi. So for either of you guys, one of the big issues that comes up, and now we get a little bit deeper. How important? Let's say, Derek. Now, again, you and I, we've talked about this. I do a lot of mix and match. Season replays for me are pretty rare. I don't do them. Not that there's anything wrong with them, but if you look at a baseball sim, how important is how do you judge accuracy? How important is accuracy, let's say, to an actual season as it was played? And I mean, what do you look for? Is that a big factor for you? Because there are some sims that are better. Let's be honest. There's some that are like, that's a little weird there, guy. Strange question, I know, but the reason I bring that up is because it's been my experience, at least, that the most polarizing digital baseball game out there is Out of the Park Baseball. I've never met anybody that likes it. They either love it or hate it. And it usually centers around, well, either the people that hate it, it's not accurate. The people who love it, it's hyper accurate. I just wonder if you could talk a little bit, just your own personal experiences, because you've played so many of these games, obviously, right. So many of these games. So maybe take us through your kind of journey a little bit about maybe with accuracy and also with flexibility, maybe talking about those two opposites, if that's not too much.
Sure.
Thanks, man.
Out of the Park, I will say that I've tried it several times. I've tried to like it. I don't hate the game, but I feel like there's so many like levers and buttons and different things.
It's the Starship Enterprise.
I've gone down so many rabbit holes and trying to tweak things, and I don't want the coaching system. I don't care about the finances and all this. I just want it to do a replay, right?
Right.
And I feel like it's trying to be too many things, maybe.
Okay.
So I don't dislike the game, but it's not my go-to for like something that I want an accurate replay.
Okay.
So I've tried, I wouldn't say every single sim that's out there. Obviously, nobody has that kind of time, but I guess I just run through a season or run through several seasons, look at the results, and just kind of see like, does it pass the sniff test, right? Like, does it,
right.
Do those numbers look right to me? It doesn't have to be perfect. I don't want it to be perfect, because then why why do it?
Why do it? You just go to backtobaseball.com.
Right. But I don't want any super extremes, somebody hitting 80 home runs or something, or, somebody batting 500. Then it's kind of like, it's not quite, you want it to be close, but it doesn't, obviously you don't want it to be exact. And
right.
There's really no way it could be exact, right? I mean,
no.
There's just so many variables. You could sit here, with some games you could get deep into the weeds, trying to configure the manager profiles, all this, this guy, Billy Martin, well, he's got to be aggressive, base running, and he never replaces the starting pitcher, and so on and so forth. But I just like them to be fairly accurate, I would say, and just there's the fun factor, and does it look right at the end of the year?
So don't be. I mean, what? So with that being said, and if you had to narrow it down, and again, no pitchforks, no torches, anything like that. What would okay? So you have three games you can go to, Derek. Only 3. We're going to send you off to the weird desert island that actually has electricity. I always thought it was a funny analogy, but there we go. What are your 3 go-tos?
My 3 go-tos?
Yeah.
Earl Weaver Baseball.
Wow. Okay.
APA Baseball for Windows Broadcast Blast, and Digital Diamond.
Wow. Okay. Earl Weaver, that's kind of a wow. Just because many great memories of that. Fantastic. Even with the I played it on an Amiga, so of course you had the you did too. Yeah. So there you go.
Quick story here. So a friend of a friend says, like, hey, you got to meet my my classmate. He's into these baseball games, and I had at that point I had an Apple IIe, so I had Earl Weaver for the Apple IIe, which it struggled to run on that thing. Right. I mean, they got it working, but it wasn't like mind blowing. I didn't have a PC at that point. The PC version is pretty good. Went to this kid's house. He's got an Amiga. Fires up Earl Weaver Baseball. I was like, oh my God, you're blowing my mind here. It's got speech. The guy, he's pronouncing the players' names, the crack of the bat, the physics. Every single hit is different. You could create your own ballpark. I mean, just so many things with that game that I felt like even in the late 90s, games were trying to measure up to the Amiga version of Earl Weaver Baseball still. It
was incredible. It really was incredible.
Like light years ahead of its time. If you compared that, in a 3-year period, Micro League came out in '84, and Earl Weaver for the Amiga, I think, was '87.
Yeah.
And it's just such an amazing game. So kudos to Don Daglow and Eddie Dombrauer and their team for coming up with that game. But yeah, I could just spend hours playing that thing. The only thing it's missing, the Amiga version, I think, doesn't have a scheduler.
No, it doesn't. As I recall, it doesn't.
The PC version, I think they came out with. I don't have the original one, but they came out with a Earl Weaver Baseball 1.5, and I think that one, either that edition or the Commissioner's Disc, had the scheduling, or the ability to schedule and kind of quick sim a season. So, quick being a relative term, but you could do it at least. So, so that's one of the downsides of like a Micro League and those older games is it's one at a time, and there's no fast sim. You got to play it. Every game takes 30 minutes, and like somebody had mentioned before, you could crank up DOSBox and run it a little bit quicker, but it's still going to take you a long time to complete a full season doing that.
We have guys on here that have tried to. It's almost impossible. John, I wanted to throw a question at you because I don't want handhelds to be left out of this as well. So, I mean, I'm looking at, just, pictures here, part of the sort of banner screen here that you guys have. Would you mind maybe talking a little bit about sort of the evolution of handhelds? Because, certainly they didn't just come out of the rip as being, maybe talk about maybe some additions or some changes, because if there was just, a handheld was just one thing, companies had to compete. And I wonder if maybe you could talk about sort of the evolution a bit of handhelds and maybe just some things like that. Again, this is not an area, I mean, I played them, but I would never claim to have any expertise at all in this area. I don't know, John, if you maybe if you could speak to a little bit of that, or maybe their history for these guys a little bit. And
Sure.
this is to make them to buy the book from you guys here too. So
I think
don't give away too much.
yeah, leave some for
I think your question is good because the Games and Simulations Committee for Saber is a bit of a microcosm of the organization as a whole. And I know that you're a member, Derek's a member, obviously, but for anybody listening that isn't, there's a place for you in Saber, whether it's Games and Simulations, or you like Japanese baseball, or Negro Leagues, or women in baseball, or you're into advanced statistics, or something that happened in the 1800s. So in terms of baseball gaming, I think it's the same kind of thing that baseball gaming is going to include, and part of the book that I wrote includes the very first patent for a baseball game from the 1880s. So it's a tabletop game, it's dice related, or all of the things that have evolved from 1800s to now, because people from the very start have wanted to do simulations of baseball games, whether it was in the off season or otherwise. So it's cool to be a part of the committee and to be part of this, even though I feel like, the handheld games from a strategy standpoint, from a simulation standpoint, certainly aren't anywhere near as advanced as a console game or the computer simulations.
right.
But even when these games started coming out, the handhelds in the late 70s, the Mattel version, for instance, has a feature where it gives you a number of beeps. And hearing those number of beeps gives you a clue whether you might be able to stretch this double into a triple. And you don't know that that's going to happen or not. But it's those little things that each of these games had, a little quirk here and there. But the biggest evolution, I think, was not from the games themselves and kind of that LED based. A lot of it is random, and there's not much skill, and there's certainly not much strategy. But in 1988, Parker Brothers came out with the starting lineup talking baseball game, which was, for me, the most unbelievable game that I'd ever witnessed. You had built into the game all-star teams for 1987 American and National League. And then you also it came with a cartridge that had Hall of Fame players on it. So,
Really?
Right out of the box, you're able to play, Walter Johnson pitching against Eric Davis.
Oh, that's cool.
So the game not only had that stuff built in, but then they had a cartridge for every single team that existed, all 26 in 1987. So you're putting into the game any combination of teams and then setting lineups. There's players on the bench.
I think I want this game.
It's awesome. And one of the things I think I said in the book was I was enamored with the game when it came out, and I just couldn't find many people that had the patience enough to go through the setup to get all the lineups done and then play the game. But it's awesome because it's like you're listening on the radio. Ted Williams, a drive back. And up goes Ricky Henderson and robs him. It's that kind of stuff. So
brilliant! I had no idea. Yeah. All right, I'm buying the game, man. I'm buying it all now.
Yeah, starting lineup talking baseball is amazing. And if what you're interested in is simulations, it has a coach mode where you just turn it on and it plays a game kind of as if you're listening to it on the radio. So it's pretty fun.
Oh, that's super, super cool.
Yeah.
Would you, Robert, we'll get you on here in a moment too, and Aaron in a little while. So would you say then, John, would that game be kind of the pinnacle for handhelds?
I mean, from a technological standpoint, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Yep.
So now that being said, certainly when we're talking about handhelds, right? Because interface did you get a sense that through the years, right? That so as they're creating these handhelds, that maybe they're taking into account user experience, because I mean that's a user interface. I mean it's a very tactile interface, but in terms of the ergonomics and adjusting to a game, because it was those handhelds were the early handhelds, right, and middle handhelds, and whatever, those were arcade games. So I'm this might seem like a silly question, but again, there's no such thing as a stupid question, right? But it may be a silly one. But a part of that evolution was, do you think more thought was given to interface? How can we put more of this into this, or make this feel more like a visceral experience? Because we're talking about, people could go to arcade and play World Series baseball, pump the quarter in there for, what was it, 3 innings or something? I don't know. I can't remember.
It was a quarter. Was it a quarter for a half inning? So
it was a quarter for a half inning. Okay.
Pumped in 18 quarters, you could play a full game.
Okay.
I actually, quick story on that. Sorry to.
Oh no, please.
Handheld conversation here, but World Series the season. So I used to play that a ton in the arcade, and kind of when I kind of around the same time, I think John, you started collecting the handhelds. You said in the late '90s. So I got back into the old video game consoles around the same time, and I don't know where I came across this, but I found an amusement company up in Connecticut, and they had World Series the season, and they had Galaga. I was like, I need to have both of these games.
Of course.
So, my grandfather and I drove up there in his pickup truck, and only one of the 2 games would fit in there. I should have, asked the guy for dimensions before I drove all the way up to So nice. we're driving back over the George Washington Bridge with a World Series the season in the back of the pickup. Getting all these people staring at me and whatever. I'm like, I don't care. That game would keep your stats, right?
Right.
So you could press. I forget. There was a button where you could press and see the current batting stats and pitching stats. You would plug in your initials and your birth date. So it would compile your stats. Like if you kept going back to the arcade, or like I wound up purchasing my own, but you could see like, okay, see the other challengers in the arcade, who's hitting 444 and who's got 20 home runs and whatever. But that was the game. Yeah, that was definitely that was probably the pinnacle of the arcade baseball gaming. I played quite a bit of Champion Baseball. I think was by Sega. Came out around '83, and that one had I think it had like 12 or 16 real life teams, and it had like the first 3 initials or the first 3 letters of the guy's first name. So you'd see like Bob and Rod and different guys' names, and you could figure out who they were by their stats.
That's so cool.
So I digress. You guys can but the starting lineup was really cool. I've only seen it a handful of times. Like I said, a friend had it, but as John described it, it's a really cool. It's kind of unique among the electronic baseball games.
I've got to snag that. John, you should be. So not only are you a great salesman for Saber, but you should be also. You just got, this is it. I'm sinking some money, guys. I'm going to bring in. We're going to be bringing Aaron in a little bit, but we're going to bring in RGO Network because he tends to not stay up as late. So RGO Network, big baseball fan, baseball gamer. So we're going to bring RGO and Robert. Welcome in, my friend. How you doing?
It has been a while there, my good friend Beatles Eternally. It is always a pleasure to be with you and everybody that joins us here for a little Saturday night Chinwag. So
yeah, all right. So we got Derek and John here. So Robert, join in the conversation, please. You got questions for these guys, comments, whatever. Go for it.
As a matter of fact, I do. And he was bringing up. I'm sorry. What's his name? The name was what? Who's the What's our special? What's our guy's name that we're talking?
Okay, well, we have two guys here, so they both. So Derek Bain, and then Derek surprised me in having the author of also with him, John Racanelli. So we have them both here. So shoot. So John and Derek.
Now he was talking about starting lineup talking baseball.
Yeah,
now,
so that was John, right?
It was John. Okay.
Okay.
I had this as well back in 1988. I had it. I wasn't able to get all the cartridges. I got the cartridge that came with the game, and I was able to get one of the National League cartridges that actually include the Chicago Cubs, the Montreal Expos, and the New York Mets. And this, of course, is 1988. So it was the 87 teams, the 87 stats. And I'm listening to this, and I'm playing it, and I don't know if they ever said who did the voice. I don't know if it was a computerized voice or somebody did the voice for the game. But here's the funny thing: after a while, okay, unfortunately I lost it, and you can probably find one on eBay. You can probably find one, but it's very hard to find the cartridges. Okay, the cartridges are like a holy grail for this thing. And afterwards, the voice that was used for starting lineup talking baseball, a couple years later, I picked up a Sega Genesis. And the Sega Genesis, the game I got for it, it happens to be in this picture, okay, is Sports Talk Baseball, what I got for the Sega Genesis. The voice that is used in Sports Talk Baseball is the exact voice used for starting lineup talking baseball. And I'm not, and there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that is the same exact either person or computerized voice that was used for Sports Talk Baseball for starting lineup talking baseball. Now, what's amazing so obviously I'm thinking this was, do you guys know who did the voice for that at all?
Yeah, Aaron just posted it in the chat. It's Lon
Simmons.
So it is Lon Simmons.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So
okay. Because he's in Tony La Russa Baseball 3.
He is.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's really amazing that was, one of the, how can I say it? It was I thought it was a generational item when it came out, because the baseball games I was playing with, okay, back before, back in the day, okay, because at that time in 1987 you have the Nintendo, the original Nintendo Entertainment System, and the games you were playing on that were Tecmo Baseball, Major League Baseball, which had all the teams and the colors, but that was pretty, and all that, but not the players though. Okay. And of course you had such on, and of course the Commodore, and then of course you have, and in that picture there, you have your baseball. I had the games to the electronic games, when you press a button and it lights up and all that. I had that as well. And, and a Midlife Crisis Baseball Simulator, which was excellent, by the way, for that system. And, and it's funny but in those days, the licensing for baseball names for the teams, where you can actually use the name Mets or Yankees or Dodgers or Red Sox, okay, was still kind of in the infantile stage, all right, of licensing for games. I mean, if you played, Status Pro Baseball. Let's talk about some of the cards and dice. The Status Pro Baseball game, which was out for many years, okay, in the 70s and the 80s, of course, you could use the players' names, but it didn't have the actual teams. It'll say New York, Boston, that thing, New York N, New York A, Chicago N. It doesn't say the name Cubs or whatever, okay? And so it is, at that time, it was the infantile stage. Now take a look at what we have, okay? Now you have games like MLB The Show, all right, Out of the Park Baseball, these computer simulations right now, Out of the Park, all of
action, all of these, yeah,
baseball. But remember, but the thing, the difference between Out of the Park and MLB The Show, those two games are licensed by Major League Baseball and the MLB Players Association.
The only two, yeah.
The only two that do that. Okay, the only two that have that. Now, is it a deal breaker that other games don't have it? Of course not. Okay, you can mod it, you can do whatever you want. Okay, and that's fine. But it is amazing now, where back in those days, where if you were playing, you're playing. Oh, we're playing the Mets, but they're actually not saying the name, or we're playing, Reggie Jackson or Ricky Henderson, but they can't use his actual name in the game, like some of the older games did. And now you come to the day where licensing is very common. Okay, for some games, it's expensive. All right, I mean the licensing, like Electronic Arts owns like the NFL licensing, which I really wish they dump it so that so we can get a better football game. But back in those days, all right, you had the only way you could play baseball utilizing real players. Starting lineup was one of those games. And of course, Commodore 64 had Micro League and that, but you could, if you really wanted to sit and play, starting lineup was one of those. And and then of course Stratomatic, which back in that day, APA back in that day. All right, if you actually wanted to use regular players, and a lot of it was so. I kind of feel that when I was younger, if I wanted to play a baseball game, I had to play a game between the visitors and the home team. All right, now I can play a game between the Mets and the Yankees, or and it's amazing how simulations have come through with the licensing, and it really blows my mind now that really anybody can now play any player, any baseball team, due to the licensing. And if you don't have the licensing, then just create it, you mod it, just like you can in Action PC Baseball,
absolutely,
or any of those other games that you see on the screen there.
Yeah,
that's amazing there, Beatles.
It's great. John, I wanted to let you know I edited the title, so we've got you up here on the tin now. So when people have questions, we know we got you and Derek in here. So we got you as captives now. So you're emblazoned on this humble little YouTube family channel here. So Robert, so I don't know, having Derek and John on here and talking about their sort of journeys. I don't know, maybe you might want to sort of share also your journeys, and maybe again any questions you might have for Derek and John, and anybody that wants to come on. We're going to bring Aaron on here in a few minutes, because I also wanted to talk a little bit about, and Derek, you and I talked about this prior to coming live, is later on maybe just getting into a little bit about baseball games as narrative. Maybe we can get into that. But anyhow, back to you guys, making my job really easy.
Well, I'll ask Derek and John a question. How did you guys really became involved in baseball simulations? I mean, I'm just a player, all right, and I've been playing cards and dice baseball now for the last 5 years. I just completed a 1983 regular season, about to start a postseason tomorrow. How did you guys get involved, really diving into the world of baseball simulations? What really got you interested in that?
I guess I'll go. So mine was, we were talking a little bit earlier. I think when I stumbled across Micro League Baseball was kind of when I really went down the rabbit hole. I'm a big numbers guy, so when I started collecting baseball cards, sure, the pictures on the front and the different designs were cool. But I would say the majority of my time was looking at the back of the cards and really trying to get a picture of my mind as to who those players were. I'm sure a lot of us, thinking back to the early days of your baseball fandom, most likely there weren't a ton of baseball games on TV, or it was maybe your local team. But what did we have? The game of the week on Saturday, and otherwise
and you
really
can't forget Twib. Can't forget Twib before
Twib,
that, right?
Of course, yep.
Yeah.
Mel Allen, yep. So used to go to the Yankee games and watch Twib up on the big
Yep.
Big board before the game. But yeah, so some of those guys, it was kind of difficult to get a picture in your mind as to who those, who the players really were, at least for me. So looking at the back of the card and kind of digesting all of those numbers, and then finding that, I can plug the numbers in from the back of the baseball card into microleague. So that's where I kind of fell down the rabbit hole there. After microleague, I went Earl Weaver baseball. I had, and I'm still kicking myself for this. I had the original APA game that was published by Random House for the Apple IIe.
Oh wow!
And I think it came with maybe the 1986 season, something like that. When I went to purchase a PC clone back in the early 90s, I wound up selling the Apple at a very cheap cost and all of the games. So I no longer have the system or that, and I feel like that game is probably pretty rare right now. But at any rate, so I did play APA on the Apple IIe. Somebody had asked earlier if it was a green screen monitor. No, it was a color monitor, 128.
Nice.
Right? So I will. We were joking earlier about thanking the Academy. I do want to say I really appreciate that my parents got me the Commodore 64 and the Apple IIe. It kind of sent me on my path. It was kind of. They encouraged my computing and gaming stuff. So,
and you got to love a granddad that's going to take you across the GWB. I mean, come on, man. That's epic.
Also, yep. So
that is epic.
Yeah. I wound up. They had to ship the Galaga separately, and I had to pick it up at a distributor in New Jersey.
Somehow that doesn't seem as cool as going across the George Washington Bridge, though, man. And when you got New Yorkers looking at you like, "What the hell's going on?" You've made it, man. You've made it, right? Yes. So, John, what about you? What kind of got you into the handhelds, baseball, whatever, man? What about you?
I went to my first Cubs game. I'm from the Chicago area. As a kindergartner, my aunt took me to opening day, and I was hooked.
Yeah,
I love baseball. I think about baseball all the time. As a kid, it was Little League, backyard ball games, lob, fast pitch, wiffle ball, baseball cards. And like I said, when I got that NTEX baseball game, I played the crap out of it. I got the Atari. I had Home Run. And then Real Sports Baseball, Super Baseball, Pedro's Baseball. And those were all kind of In television baseball, when I got ColecoVision with the Super Action controllers, that was a lot of fun. And then when the Nintendo Entertainment System came out, RBI Baseball, Baseball Stars, Major League Baseball. I had all of them. Baseball Simulator 1000, whatever it was, I couldn't get enough. And by the time Super Nintendo was out, I was like, I need to have every single baseball game there is.
I love it.
And so that's just kind of it. And technologically, I kind of ended probably with like a Game Boy. I've got some Game Boy baseball games that I would play, but kind of as I transitioned into the 90s, I started to get that nostalgic feel for NTEX. And that game that I had as a kid was long gone. So, eBay was a couple of years, probably when it was really getting up and going. My profile, you'll see, is started in 1999. So I started buying these games again, and I thought these were great. And a lot of them, at that point, I was getting for 99 cents plus shipping. And I just loved them. Somebody mentioned earlier that they look cool. I honestly think they're like little works of art. So many
sure
of them,
they are.
The stylized way that they describe a baseball stadium, they lay out the infield, the outfield walls, things like that. And it was fun to see the games kind of progress from the random blinking LED lights. That original NTEX game doesn't even keep score. It came with paper score pads, so you had to manually keep score. And then by the time, we get to the late 80s, we got starting out talking baseball. We've got all those Tiger games with the liquid crystal display screens that
Yeah, Aaron mentioned those earlier.
So you're seeing not only a blinking red light, but now you've got at least a little bit of a figure. You're seeing bats swinging balls in the air and fielders with gloves on. So that was kind of it. And I just have kind of stayed kind of in that realm at this point. My kids, when they got the baseball games for the Wii or their Xbox, I thought I was trying to fly the space shuttle, man. I didn't know what was going on. I'm like, I need a single button, and I could try and make this work. But I just love how I don't know if the word is crazy, but how amazing baseball simulations have come in terms of the electronic games, the simulations, and I think the handheld games were a part of the story, but probably like we talked about, probably have seen their heyday.
Well, I'm so glad that we can find them and everything, and as I said, I'm going to be buying the one that you taught. Whatever it costs, I'm doing it. Whatever I got to knock over. I've got good Irish and Italian relatives that, they find things that fall off of trucks. I can't help it. What can I say? So for both of you, maybe if we could swing into this narrative a bit, because we're talking to authors and you guys writing a history. History is a story. So for both of you guys, how would you say that baseball gaming has kind of, because I think maybe there's a synergy. How has that sort of enhanced your love of baseball, and how much of your baseball gaming became sort of narrative to you in the way that like you became involved in projects that you were doing, or the handheld that you were playing, like in terms of like. I argue, for instance, and maybe this helps a little, that if I'm doing a project, so right now, a couple that I do on here, that those games and those season replays, and Robert, you certainly could speak to this as well, with your season replays that you do in Inside Pitch Baseball, that these narratives become as real as actual baseball. I wonder if you guys could talk about that a little bit, both from Derek, from your perspective, from the kind of computer or console game side, and John, you for the handheld. Just the kind of meta idea of baseball and gaming together. You guys, yeah?
So I guess I would say that my experience with playing the different computer baseball sims and creating, some of these mashup type of teams has given me a different appreciation for some players that I probably wouldn't have heard of or really spent much time on if I hadn't done so otherwise. Maybe somebody that was like a fourth outfielder back in 1910 or something that either I had maybe I'd heard the name in passing but didn't really have an appreciation for certain guys. So I think in that type of way there's a different appreciation for once you drill down. You can sit here and play a game and there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not saying don't do it, but
right.
And I've just done some of these recently, doing just an as played season, and I kind of went back to my frame of reference, which was the mid 80s, playing as my favorite team, which is the Angels, and trying to outmanage Gene Mock or John McNamara, how they did,
Well, a Red Sox fan would certainly argue that outmanaging McNamara would be an easy thing, but we won't touch on any sore subjects there.
Right. So, but yeah, so it's kind of, you also get a different appreciation for like, okay, I'm the manager.
Right.
Do they have some input as to what players make their roster? I'm sure they do, in conjunction with, talking to the GM and other people in the front office. But sometimes it's like the hand that you're dealt, right? Your injuries, and it's like, well, I'm stuck with this guy with a 7 ERA.
Right.
When am I going to bring him into a ball game? Usually it's, I'm only going to use this guy in a blowout or whatever. But I try to make things, if I'm doing like an as played, I want it to be sort of as real as possible. So I'm not going to like just hide some guy on the bench and never use him. So,
Right.
or in the back of the bullpen. So
I don't know if you guys are familiar with. I've got Legends up here, and you hear me talk about him, and so I think this will strike home what you were talking about, that appreciation of the Echo. So he's making he's kind of changed MLB the Show into a baseball sim. You know, when we talk about baseball sims, and he's got probably the coolest idea that he's been playing out now for 4 seasons. On MLB the Show, where it's an all-time greats team, and it's basically it's he's not playing it as a Twitch game. And I know that if you guys haven't checked it out, check out his channel. It's a lot of fun, and what he's doing with MLB the Show. But Legends, I think, is echoing here and talking about that you get that better appreciation for certain guys. And I know that I never claimed to be a historian of baseball. I'm a student of the history of the game, but I learned so much from these other guys, and just with Legends, like watching his games, I'm like, oh, I've got to investigate this guy further. Even though these are sort of all-time great teams, but what makes his unique is, so like in season 1, right, you didn't have like all the usual suspects in the Pirates or the Cubs or the Mets or the Yankees. It's this evolving, continuing draft league that's really, really an amazing thing. And so Legends, I could just even ask you could answer in chat if you don't feel like coming on mic. I mean, so for you, this sense of narrative, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to get into is how, and not sounding like Robert Coover here in Universal Baseball Association, because we don't want any of our players to meet tragic ends like they did in his book, but how real do these narratives become, I guess, for anybody that wants to talk about it? Robert, Aaron, anybody. Because I mean, I don't think you can just play a game, but I know sometimes even on a one-off, like I was stoked. At one time on this entire channel, I had a player hit for the Psycho, and it was Jimmy Fox. And it was amazing. And I remember that just as much as I remember the last time the Pirates sort of had an exciting no-hitter, or all these great things in baseball that remember, Mark McGwire, and Sammy Sosa, the great home run chase of that year. And so that's what I'm kind of trying to hone in on, is how gaming kind of sort of, because a lot of us right now are not happy with what's going on in real baseball, for lack of a better term, what Manfred's doing to the game. And if anybody's a friend of Rob Manfred, sorry. But so we can go back and play baseball, handheld, computer, console, when it was pristine. We make it what we want it to be. But do you find, like John, Robert, Derek, do you find moments throughout your time as gamers remembering amazing things that happened?
Well, I'll go ahead and I'll start with this one. Doing these replays that I've been doing with Inside Pitch, and now I've added Fall Classic Baseball to my repertoire.
You have
for season replays. There have been a lot of stories that I can tell. The difference between doing it between cards and dice and actually using a controller on a TV, I think it's a little bit more personal when you use cards and dice, literally writing the information in your scorecard. And what I do, of course, move cards around a board for visual aspects so people can actually see what's happening in the game. And I mean, when I started doing this, I did a 1994 kind of a restart using payoff pitch baseball, and I rolled a no-hitter. And that was with Bill Swift of the San Francisco Giants against the Houston Astros. Nice. in a wild card series game that I played in. A game to this day, that is one of the best games I ever rolled. And then switching from payoff pitch to inside pitch, I have rolled, I believe, 3 cycles in the seasons I've done it.
Cool.
One was done by Mike Schmidt, in my 1976 replay. Another one I think was done by Pete Rose, who never hit for the cycle in his career. All those hits he had, he never ever hit for the cycle, but he hits for the cycle in one of my replays for 1969.
Right.
And and I had another guy hit for the cycle. I forget who it was. I think it was in my I believe it was in my 2016 replay. And the thing is that those are amazing when you actually roll them. It's one thing when you do it on a computer screen, and the thing about computers, if you do it on like MLB The Show, I don't care what anybody says, is not a simulation. It's a game, and the reason why is because you're utilizing a controller, trying to hit the ball, trying to make a catch. Okay.
Unless you're doing it like Legends, then I I think what he's doing is like a sim. I'll just offer that.
If you're just using computer on computer, then yeah, it's sort of a sim, but it still has a lot of gaming attributes because it utilizes other aspects, okay, of a game. All right. The thing about playing games like Stratomatic, Payoff Pitch, Inside Pitch, Fall Classic, APA, okay, these are really simulations utilizing an engine that somebody created to create an accurate game of baseball, and to literally roll the dice to see, how a game plays out. You don't know how many games I've had where a team was dead in the water and won it in the bottom of the ninth. How many games I've rolled where we're just crazy matchups going 16, 17, 18 innings. Nobody wanted to win it. Okay. Sometimes the dice have a mind of its own. The thing about it is that also the dice don't cheat. And of course, and as I've said this before, there are gaming systems out there that are gamey, okay? And I'm not going to go into it, but there are a lot of gaming computer simulations out there or something that are kind of gamey. And what I mean by gamey is when you go ahead and you take a team, when you are in control of a team, playing against the AI, somehow or other, you could be up 7-0, and all of a sudden, no matter what you do, no matter what you try to do on the mound or at the plate, you wind up losing that game. All right. Now, can it happen? Of course it can. But it just seems to be, where, it just seems that it's just to me, it's more of a simulation when you just have that kind of thing with the engine. Now, not every engine is perfect. Of course, not every gaming engine is perfect. Some people think Stratomatic is the most accurate. Some don't. Some people think Inside Pitch is the most accurate. Some don't. APA, whatever. Okay. Mm-hmm. And it just, to me, I just feel that if you're playing a video game, the software, just for some reason, the software has to be challenging in a way. So there have been so many times that I played like a certain baseball game, and this should be an easy win, and all of a sudden, no matter what I do, I can't win. No matter what I do, I make all the right moves, and I still don't win. So I gave up on. I really gave up on computer gaming. I did, and I'm reading what I don't think I understand Legend Sports Universe and what he said here. I didn't make. What is he trying to say there? I don't get it. Beatles, read that to me.
To say a game where so much of the game is a non-factor is more of a simulation. The batter-pitcher confrontation is boiled down to a single dice roll. There's simply no way that is more of a sim. So, and Legends will correct me. So, and again, so we have really three authors here. Legends, for those of you who don't know, journalist and editor. So I think, and I'm treading carefully here because I'm reading text and I don't write without vocal inflection, anything like that. So what I'm reading here that when he's saying that the batter pitcher confrontation is boiled down to a single dice roll, he says that he's making the argument that interface that makes it more of a sim. I'm guessing that for you, like, so if you make the assertion that you have made in the past, and we've discussed this, and I think you and I have agreed to disagree on this, that somehow the computer cheats, and I think that we hear that.
It does. There's no doubt in my mind.
Well, see, I think we hear that leveled more at
does.
what people would call so-called closed engine games. So I think you would hear that leveled more at something like action PC baseball than you would at strat PC baseball, because you're rolling the dice in that game, or digital diamond if you're rolling your own dice, or pocket pennant run if you're rolling your own dice. It's not going to cheat, right? Let's continue. He's maybe giving a little bit more explication here. Cards and Dice boils the confrontation to a single dice roll, no pitch count. There, he's right. Pitch types, all the things that make the batter pitcher confrontation the best thing in sports is absent. So that's the argument there, which you can't really. I mean, in that respect, Robert, and again, Derek and John are like breaking out the popcorn here, I think. So you can't, Robert, I think you mentioned one game that actually does, a Cards and Dice game that does do a sort of pitch count thing, but that's pretty rare in the Cards and Dice world, right? So you do have a lot more that you can do with the computer. I don't know if you would concede that or not. In a computer game, if I'm playing baseball for Windows, and I should do a game on here and show guys here how to manage that, because I usually just let it run as a broadcast. But I'm gonna make decisions. In other words, playing a computer game, okay, am I going to hit and run? Am I going to run and hit? With Cards and Dice, you're rolling the dice, and it's, to me, while it's visceral, and I like Cards and Dice, Robert, please don't get me wrong. For me, it feels like it's more reactive. Whereas if I'm playing a digital game, I can be more proactive. And so I think in that way, I can manage a team. So I could do a season replay, let's say, of 1971 Pirates, right? And relive the glory days there and have Bob Roberts and all that. And I'm, and I can kind of tell that batter, okay, in this situation, I've got Gene Klein's on, and I want, do I want to take the bat out of Bob Robertson's hands or whatever? Do I want to call for a hit and run here? Klein's has great speed. Cards and Dice, I do know that with Inside Pitch, you do have that strategy role, but you don't, I don't know that the managing in a Cards and Dice game is quite as deep. And I'm no authority, but that's where I'm coming from. And I think, again, where Legends is talking about, the pitch count, pitch types, all that. Could you argue that the Cards and Dice, not knocking it, but can bring that same kind of experience as a manager, if we're talking managing a game?
I think that in Cards and Dice, I think you actually may have more control, because you're actually handling the players. You're actually moving them themselves. You're actually rolling the dice. You're the one that's actually seeing the engine at work. As we know, in other games, you don't see the engine at work. So how do I know that the computer said, "Oh, you're playing against me"? All right, well, we're going to roll the dice, and I'm going to roll my internal dice. And if I'm just a little bit closer to me winning, I'm going to throw that roll at you. Mm-hmm. There are certain dice games you don't see that. Now, Stratomatic is one of which needs to get other DOS ages, but Stratomatic, all right, you actually can see the dice being rolled, all right. But that being said, the dice are still being rolled by a computer random generator. So how do we know that the AI that is is plugged into that system is not maybe finagling the dice roll a little bit when you play against it? For instance, I'll give an example. Okay. I did a series between the 1927 New York Yankees against the 1927 Pittsburgh Pirates. Mm-hmm. I played the Yankees against the Pirates, and I lost 4 games to 1. Mm-hmm. Bullshit. I don't care what anybody says. 99 times, 100 times out of 100 times, 1927 Yankees beat the 1927 Pirates.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I lost 4 games to 1, and I
Mm-hmm.
took the Yankees, and I managed them just as I feel you would manage them.
Right.
But no matter what happened, the Pirates always got the hit they needed. They always made the play. And by the way, it is on my channel.
Mm-hmm.
So you can catch that series where the New York Yankees, the greatest team in baseball history, fought the freaking Pirates of 1927. Bullshit. Okay, so how do I know the computer didn't say, "Oh, you're playing the Yankees, so I'm going to play the Pirates, and I'm going to show you how I can beat the greatest team ever"? You see, the thing about it is when you actually roll the dice, unless you decide to cheat, okay, yourself and change the dice roll a little bit, well, then you're not, that's it. But the dice are going to roll the dice the way they're going to roll. You can load them, of course, but why would you want to do that? It makes no sense.
Or if you're a sleight of hand guy like me.
Yeah, exactly.
So the beautiful part about it is so that we can kind of swing back to where we were about narrative. And so thank you for talking about this, but also back when you were referencing Mike Schmidt and you remembered that cycle. Just as I remembered the only no-hitter I had was on this channel, Scott McGregor, in a mixed era league, by the way. And it was Scott McGregor. Thank you, Scott. Haven't had a no-hitter since. Is that I like that we can have even the spirited discussions. And I would say this, Robert, that sort of like how the perennial argument is who's the greatest baseball player of all time. And some people are going to say Babe Ruth, some people are going to say Willie Mays, what have you. I think that let's put the spirited discussions that are I think perennially this is going to be an always thing, that cards and dice versus digital. I personally, just because of my checkered past, being a sleight of hand artist, having worked in carnivals and circuses, I know what cheating is because I've done it. And in fact, magic is a scam. Let's be honest about it. But I'm not convinced myself that just because I can't see the result of a play when I roll a couple geometric objects, that is that there's somehow cheating going on. In fact, but with all that being said, what is coming down to that is even your experience of your 1927 Yankees and Pirates, and the Pirates were a good team. I'm not arguing that they would have beaten the Yankees, but the mistake they made was watching the Yankees take batting practice. But they were a tough team. That was, they were not a slouch team. But I do get where you're coming from. But even so, that narrative to you was a real. That's something that you can talk about. You remember, right? As much as you remember, your Mets and the 1986 World Series, which you said is for you is the greatest World Series ever, right? And it was a great World Series. I won't argue with that, certainly. And I'm not arguing with you. In fact, I appreciate that, what you're saying, and I do. What I would just like to ask guys, and I usually don't kind of put down this kind of hard thing, is we can certainly always have discussions about these things and all that. But if we could kind of just swing back to the narrative thing just for a little bit, and maybe we can kind of silence the guns of the psalm here. And I'm not bitching at anybody, believe me. Guys know I don't do that unless somebody makes a, very bad comment about somebody or something. But maybe kind of moving forward about this narrative. Derek, in your projects, yes, were there moments that stood out to you that you remember now, that maybe when you were playing Earl Weaver baseball 20 years ago or whenever that was, that still stand out to you today as much as a real baseball moment that happened?
I have a recent example.
Okay.
Doing the 1984 replay, and I think 3 of the 4 teams that actually made it to the playoffs made it to the playoffs in my replay. The only one that was different is, I think, Houston instead of San Diego. Okay. So the interesting game to me was the Royals took the Tigers to a game 5, where in real life they were swept out in 3 games, right?
Mm-hmm.
Game 5 was Bud Black, and I don't recall. It's probably would have been Dan Petrie on the mound. So, long story short, I play the game. I fast play the game because I was trying to get to the World Series. I was going to post videos of the World Series, but the playoffs, I was just going to do a quick recap.
Okay.
I play the game, and it was a shutout. Kansas City defeated Detroit. And I click into the box score. Lo and behold, Bud Black had pitched a no-hitter. It's like, oh, that's
wow.
really cool. All right. So I'm drilling down, looking at the line. Is everybody has 3 at bats, and I see that he has no walks, and I'm like,
oh man,
right. So then I went over to the scorecard tab, and I'm in Digital Diamond, and I click on scorecard, and I'm like, 27 up, 27 down. He pitched a perfect game in Game 5 of the ALCS.
Oh wow!
So
that's incredible. I've never ever. I mean, I've never came.
I don't. I mean, when I do, like a fast play replay, yes, I go back in, look at special events or whatever, whatever game I'm in.
Sure.
As long as it's recording, who hit 3 homers in a game, and who had 5 hits in a game, and check off, no hitters, 1 hitters, whatever.
Right.
And yes, I've seen no hitters, but I don't think I've ever seen a perfect game before.
Wow. So you're also very much into, and I'd mentioned we had talked about playing the, mixed era leagues and stuff like that. So if you remember, I asked you before your 3 go-tos, right? I wasn't cruel. I didn't say you had to pick one game.
Right.
So, but of those 3 that you mentioned, which one do you find for you to be, so I am going to pin you down a little bit here. Which one do you find is the most satisfying for creating the types of projects that you would like to do? And I'm speaking in terms of all-time great teams or mixed era players, something like that. Which one do you find most kind of, I don't know, easy to use, gratifying, that it's the one that you want to go to first to create a project? If
my go-to is Digital Diamond.
Digital Diamond.
I've been playing that for, I don't know, more than 5 years probably now.
And Mark's made a great game. He really has. Huh?
It's an excellent game.
Yeah.
And he's really good at feedback, suggestions. I'll let him know, like, hey, I ran into an issue with something. Hey, just upload the library to me. I'll take a look at it. And so, yeah, definitely. Kudos to Mark and
oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no,
absolutely.
I love that game. It's kind of, to me, that it's like a sandbox. I don't feel overwhelmed with all of the. Are there a lot of options? You can drill down and really do a lot with it.
You can. It's not out of the park though. You can say it. It's not.
I'm trying to be,
No, it's cool. Yeah. I mean, look, I love Out of the Park, but I also love Digital Diamond. It's, and a lot of guys here. And Out of the Park's a freaky, crazy game. It really is. But yeah, so Digital Diamond. So you've got to be pretty excited at the inclusion of a full-fledged Status Pro now, 2 game engines now.
Yep. That's really cool.
Yeah, how about it?
Yeah, and again, I'm not a card and dice guy, but the board game companion is kind of a game changer, right? I know that there's, they also have that in Pocket Pennant Run, I think was. Yeah,
they do. And in fact, updates should be coming, I think, this week, and it looks fantastic.
So I think that's super cool. Todd just asked, did I do any libraries for Digital Diamond? I do. Out on the website, I did the retro World Baseball Classic libraries. And I have some out there for my hardball retrospective teams. But as soon as I have some more free time, I'm going to work on some more. I did want to mention, I think we were talking about this or touched on this earlier with APA. I do have 5.75. I haven't upgraded to version 6 yet.
Neither have I.
But I also have running in VirtualBox. I have 5.5.
Same.
With the Fan Park Encyclopedia.
Yes.
So I do just started doing a bunch of drafts in there, and I find that kind of fascinating because you sit there. I do the Serpentine draft, just a single season, just dump all the players in, but it's a lot of fun. Like, you'll pick a guy, and then 30 some odd players go off the board, or 40, depending on where you are in the serpentine or the snake draft, whatever they call it. And then you're looking at the ratings, and you're trying to plug in, like, okay, well, yeah, I need a pitcher here, and this guy has a 9 grade, and just trying to figure out how to shape your team. So I've been having a lot of fun with that recently.
And for anybody out there that plays Baseball for Windows, which I just happen to have up in the background, don't know how that happened, but there it is, the league manager. Derek just did two wonderful videos. One on old time baseball, and he's done a lot of videos. We'll get into that, but also for drafting and Baseball for Windows. And guys, it's not just a good game because it's got the Ernie Harwell narrator. It's a good baseball game, and I think that if you go and you check out Derek's tutorials on both, because you can get old time baseball on the cheap at old-games.com, legit site, and Baseball for Windows is still available. Fan Park Encyclopedia, you would have to pry it from my cold dead hands. I have mine. There's just no way I would ever part with that thing. It's good for so many things. But guys, check those videos out. And if you have APA PC Baseball, you have old time baseball, or you're like Derek and I, and you have both, I think you're going to get a lot of value. I learned a lot from both of those videos, so do check those out.
Quick APA story for you. And
Please.
I found this on one of the forums. It might have been out on Delphi or one of the.
Oh, didn't know that, Legend.
That Ernie Harwell came in and did almost all of that play-by-play over the course of a single weekend. And then I think he came back a few weeks later and did the player names.
Right.
It's just the depth of the play-by-play in that game is just unparalleled, in my opinion.
Yep.
Just so many different phrases that it's like, oh, I've never heard that before, and I've been playing this for
same here. Oh my
25,
god.
25 30 years I've been playing this game. I've never heard him say that before. So
yeah, it's amazing. And I think about it, that Ernie not only said all the last names, but so many of the first names, and that there was just so many things in that game that I will say this, right? Again, about not hearing, I still hear Ernie. You're right. I've never heard him say that before. I've been playing this game forever myself, but I'll look over at an earlier Total Baseball, right? So about the time, let's say, that Ernie was doing this, and I look at the player and pitchers register. What a Herculean effort that was, right? Not only all the players, but all the numbers he had to do, everything. I mean, that's just it's mind-boggling.
It is,
and I don't think we'll ever see a game like that again, because could you imagine how much it would cost to have, say, John Miller do like a sequel to Baseball for Windows, picking up where Ernie Harwell left off in 1998? Oh my God! I was
thinking it really would have been nice to have a game with Vin Scully's voice on it as well.
Oh, I know they waited too long, huh?
Yep.
About it. Yeah, even if they just would have had Vin go from 1998 on, right? That would have been something.
Yep. I had the pleasure of speaking to Don Daglow for several hours when.
Oh wow!
At our Sabre convention in Minnesota, he was.
What a privilege that is.
And just to comment on Don and Eddie Dombrauer and a number of these guys, just like. As a 10-year-old, I'm playing games that they've written, and then 30, 40 years later to be able to speak to them, if even remotely, but Don in person and Mike Cislinski from Dynasty League as well. Just really great guys, super down to earth and everything.
Right.
But Don was telling me a story about when they had Mel Allen in the studio for all-time baseball and Tony La Russa 3, kind of along the same lines as Ernie, is, all of these different phrases that they had to say, and all the names and the numbers, and just, the effort that goes into that. And also, you can check out the videos on Saber Baseball Gaming. Don and Eddie talk about when they sat down with Earl Weaver, and they're doing strategy sessions for the game and everything. And the one quick story I'll relay is they're sitting in a conference room with Earl, and they were talking about some type of a play where the ball is getting relayed from the outfield. And Earl's like, okay, you get up, you stand over there. You're the center fielder. You're the third baseman over here. You're the right fielder. The right fielder backs up the center fielder. This guy backs up the third base. So he was showing them basically how different plays were run, and that really created the artificial intelligence for Earl Weaver baseball. And he relayed similar stories with Tony La Russa. Just really amazing. It wasn't just their name on the cover.
They really got involved.
They got involved with those games. So, and I think that's, again, one of the things that put those games out in front of some of the other efforts around that time.
So do you think it is limited expense or a company's bottom line that they don't want to sort of go down that road? Legend says he would do it on the cheap. If you ever heard him, he's great. But he has great voice. He and Chris Slovak, best baseball voices in this community, sound like real game. But do you think that obviously it's bottom line? Because I know a lot of guys in this community have said, and these are of course the guys like myself love out of the park baseball, that if they would add an Ernie Harwell type announcer, so not like just reading, but actually giving you that feel of the game, that would be right. That would be the proverbial icing on the cake, and that would make it, truly this amazing. Do you envision a time, Derek, when we might see somebody brave enough to say, okay, we're going to hire maybe not a John Miller or something, but let's look for a guy that's got a good voice in the minors. Let's get Legends or Chris. Let's get one of these guys. Let's create a baseball game where we're really giving that sense of you're at the ballpark, you're listening to a game on the radio, whatever. What do you think? Do you think that's a possibility? So I asked John to be a futurist earlier. No, I'm asking you, please.
Right. So we're talking about for one of the sims like Out of the Park or Action PC or Digital Diamond, or right, because MLB The Show does have.
They do. It does. And thankfully Legends turns it off. But
right,
yeah.
For the current game, that's pretty much it, though, right? So
that's it.
And I'm sure it's a cost thing. So, but yeah, could you get somebody on the cheap maybe to do it? Like you said, a minor league announcer, maybe.
I think it would be amazing. I wish. I know that John Herson, right before they released 5.75, there was talk of having, I think, Skip Van Wieren pick up, and then they decided instead to kind of invest in, upgrading, if you will, baseball for Windows to 5.5. So, and then he had said at one point that there is still thought about doing it. Then I guess that went by the wayside. I would love to see it happen. I think that even for all the kind of glitches and hitches that you do obviously hear in baseball for Windows, it still trumps even MLB The Shows, because MLB The Show will start repeating itself, which is why I'm glad Legends shuts it off. But with that Harwell, that was a masterpiece. It really, really was. I know Mel Allen did a lot of work in old time baseball, but it wasn't to the level of baseball for Windows. Not even close.
I can't imagine how many. I'm not sure if I read it somewhere, but how many different phrases that Ernie says in the game. It's mind blowing.
Yeah, it is. And guys are putting in here some of their. Aaron put into it. He's out for excessive window shopping, and of course, what's the one where he gets he gets a pie recipe from a woman? Blowout games are funny because Ernie, the Millers threw in such just cool things in there, and I don't know. I mean, it's. I guess what I've just got to be happy is, okay, we still have baseball for Windows, and guys like you and I can still play it, and that's all right, and be happy with it.
I know my son and I, when we're playing MLB The Show, we always joke about the comment about plate discipline, because it comes up like every other inning. So
right. Oh, John left us. Oh, John. Oh, sorry, man.
Yeah. I guess he had to had to head out. But
Well,
yeah, I appreciate
thank you,
it.
John, for
Yeah.
coming in. Yeah.
Yep.
John, thank you so much. Oh, you're always welcome, man. Always welcome. And guys really enjoyed it, and a lot of people playing handhelds. And it was good to hear you talk about their evolution and your love of baseball. When you started talking about just the way you stressed your love of baseball, man, that just hit me where I live. And this community is about that. Everybody loves the game, even if we're pissed off at it. We love baseball and the chance to play it and stuff like that. So, Derek, God, we could go on for hours and hours. I'm just trying to be very, very, I want to be cognizant of your time and everything like that. Because if you know anything about this channel, it goes forever. So
I'm good for a bit more.
All right.
Yep. I do want to mention something about the book that John and I did. Please do. There's a section in there, designer and programmer interviews. So we have Don Daglow, Eddie Dombrower, Lance Hafner, Mark Lesser, Tom Tippett, and Glenn Wolfram. So
wow, talk about an all-star lineup.
So I'm sure you guys are familiar with most of the names on that list.
Yep.
Mark Lesser programmed the Mattel baseball handheld. And I think he also did some work on Micro League 2. But that was interesting for me to get a perspective on the handheld side of things. And Tom Tippett, I didn't get a chance to speak to him, but that was through email.
Okay.
But for obviously for the Pursue the Pennant / Diamond Mind games. And Glenn Wolfram, we also had him on our one of our Saber meetings. Glenn did various tasks for the Front Page Sports Baseball, the 3 games.
Excellent franchise.
And the 3rd game, I think he was bumped up to like the producer role. But he had done like some of the front end menuing stuff in the 1st game, and then he basically kind of moved up the ladder. But he was a fun interview as well. So that to me that was a lot of fun getting to interview those guys, and just the level of I know we were talking beforehand, the level of detail that they can recall from 30, 40 years ago is just to me it was really nice to see. Not that I was expecting 1 or 2 sentence answers, but some of them were like a paragraph or 2 on like how they, how we did the physics for this, or, the stadium construction, or, we had AutoCAD designs for the stadiums, all this different, the level of detail that, you can see their love of the game and how it comes across, and none of these games are perfect. Yeah, there are,
right.
Some of these games have flaws. That's why there's patches and different things. Back in the really good old days, you got a cartridge, and that's you got what you got, right?
You got what you got.
Yeah. And if there was a bug, or if there was an Easter egg or whatever, it was burned into those EPROMs or whatever, and it was there for all eternity, right? But,
right.
So
I loved Eddie Dombrower's baseball, and I just happened to be, as you were talking, found his website. So
yes.
Still cool things happening.
Yeah.
So with I remember playing his I Got It baseball, and it was such a cool game. But I guess, do you know, Derek, was he trying to find a publisher, a bigger game publisher for that? I mean, it was a good baseball game.
I'm not quite sure. I think he, from what I recall, is things didn't end very well with Earl Weaver 2.
Right.
It was a rushed release. They didn't have adequate testing from what Eddie said to me.
Okay. And, there you go, Aaron. Mm-hmm.
So I guess eventually he moved on from EA, but he was able to acquire the code for Weaver 2. And I think he said it at some point there was going to be a Weaver 3, but that got shelved. So I Got It Baseball is basically Earl Weaver Baseball 2, just updated, and it was released as shareware. And then he released the EWB Baseball for iPhone. I don't know if he's still planning to do anything with that code, or, but yeah, I'd love to see, a Weaver 3 at some point.
Yeah, it would be amazing.
I guess the one thing, there were a lot of criticism on the, I guess the graphics for 2, the camera angles, and there were some weird things when the camera would zoom in on certain things, maybe incorrectly. And it probably would have been something if they had adequate time to test it and debug it. It probably would have gotten straightened out. I think they didn't have time to put a crowd in the seats,
Right.
So, but I guess my thought, there are a lot of cool new features.
You're on, Aaron, by the way, so just to let you know.
Sorry,
Go ahead, Derek, please. No, you're good. Go ahead, Derek.
There were a lot of cool new features in Earl Weaver Baseball 2. But I guess what I would like to see is a mashup of like the cool new features that were added to 2, but to put them into like the Amiga-based graphics and everything. Kind of see like if the Amiga game could have a sequel, but with those new features incorporated, is what I'm trying to get at.
That would be amazing. Aaron, welcome aboard.
Hello,
so Derek, Aaron is our kind of man of 1,000 voices. So if he every once in a while channels his Randy Savage or Hulk Hogan or Harry Carey, you know. So Aaron, do you have any questions for Derek or some input with what he's been talking about or what John was talking about earlier?
I can't really question was because you were mentioning the starting lineup talking baseball a few minutes ago. I just I remember how I discovered it. I was on YouTube a couple years ago, right around the Christmas holidays, and I saw this, no pun intended, I saw this video of this family. It was a dad and I guess his kids. They got this game in the mail. They're unboxing it, and then they get it out of the box. They put the batteries in, and they're playing it. And this thing is like naming off actual like major leaguers and stuff. And I'm going, holy shit! It's like, and I looked it up more and more, and I kept seeing more like this guy on YouTube I follow who does like these interesting like gadgets from like the 1980s and 90s and stuff. He's got like. He had like 2 or 3 videos devoted to this product. I'm like, I wonder if it's still out there somewhere. And then, of course, I waited and I asked around for a while, and finally, right around the last year, the Christmas holidays, my oldest cousin and I were hanging around his place one day. We were at his place, or we were at a restaurant one day, and he had his phone. He was looking on eBay, and he goes, starting lineup, Parker Brothers starting lineup, talking baseball, $40. I'm like, damn. I mean, and he's like, they offered like 1 cartridge or something like that, along with the Hall of Fame thing. But we waited a few months later until the Christmas holidays. I was at his house, and then he sees it again. It's the same price, but they got like, he was looking for more cartridges, and sure enough, he kind of, I guess I don't even want to use the word decoyed, but he kind of secreted it from me for like until he goes, hey, you want to hang out after Christmas Day? I'm like, sure, I got nothing to do, and he gives me this big. I did a whole unboxing video about it, big giant box, and I'm like, oh my gosh, and I get it out, and we got the batteries in and started playing. I'm like, this is just like what I've seen on YouTube. And it's got, you got the whole set's like 9 cartridges, but they're hard to find. But I've been playing that for I don't know how long now, and I love it. It's like listening to a radio, except it's
Good
a
stuff, good memories, huh?
electronic. Oh my gosh! I mean, if you're actually looking for videos, you probably will find it on eBay. It's just a matter of finding someone that's offer you a decent price to sell it. Plus, you got to get the team cartridges and all that, which some have 3, some have 4. I have 6 teams in total right now,
Okay,
but
cool.
And as all of you know, I'm still playing baseball for Windows. I've been a key. I don't want to say key ambassador, but like I've been playing that since since at least 2023 or whereabouts there. But Derek, I was going to ask you: have you tried games like Strategy Baseball and Pure Sim?
Briefly tried Pure Sim. Strategy does not ring a bell to me. No.
I think Strategy was made in the same guise as Pure Sim, but it was a little more.
So
is that DOS? It's a DOS looking. Is it SBS or something?
No, that's Strategic Baseball Simulator.
Yeah.
So, Aaron, what Strategy Baseball is, just very quickly, is when Sean Sullivan decided to just give Pure Sim to everybody and got out of it and said, "Oh, I'll be late," coming back later with a sequel, which still hasn't happened. Sean Sullivan, wherever you are out there, one of the guys that programmed with him created a freeware spinoff called Strategy Baseball. So it's a little bit more limited than Pure Sim, but that's the story. So not to be confused with Strategic Baseball Simulator, which is the DOSy looking game and does take some patience if you want to get around it. Derek, I wanted to ask you a question because we have Legends Sports University here. You and I both love to do a lot of cross-era play, all-time greats. So let me ask you, what do you do and how do you handle when you're creating a league? And let's say we'll just use teams. You've got the 1922 Browns, the 53 Dodgers, for Robert, the 27 Yankees, what have you. How do you handle sort of different era plays as far as normalizing? How do you approach that? And you pick whichever. I mean, you talked about Digital Diamond, so because the argument is, well, dead ball pitchers, they may take a hit or they may be too dominant, or what happens to the dead ball batters in in the live ball era or vice versa. I just wonder if you wanted to talk about that a little bit, if you could. How do you handle sort of normalizing players across all these time periods in baseball?
Generally, the replays that I set up, I'm not choosing players from distant or eras like that. I'm doing 5-year, maybe 10-year at the most. So they're not that. So yeah, if I'm playing the 1960s, right, you've got the really low, batting in the mid 60s, and then things are starting to, I don't know if you would say normalize, but with the lowering of the pitcher's mound and different things in 1960.
69 after that crazy 68 year. Yeah.
So, but no, I'm not really setting up leagues where I have a guy from 1905 and a guy from 1987 or 2019 or something minor. Generally, I do like 5-year, 10-year periods. So
that makes sense. Just because we have a thing that we're going to be kicking back off again. It's called the Ned McGreevy League, and so, but it kind of does what you're doing, but taking it back to the distant past. And so it's players. The original version was players from 1880 to 1919. So the tricky bit about that was, of course, prior to 1893, baseball's still going through so many rule changes. That
9 balls for a walk,
9 balls for a walk, right? That whole thing,
walk.
And stolen base was defined a little bit differently. Sacrifice hits were a thing, and then they weren't. But so we found
fair foul hit and 4 strikes and
exactly
so many. It's such a mess.
It was a mess, but it was fun, and we were able, with the help of Steve Tate, to to find a good year to normalize to. So, and for anybody who cares, it's 1900. If you ever want to try that time period, 1900s worked really well because we noticed that Wee Willie Keeler, one of the hardest guys to strike out in baseball history, was striking out like crazy. Like, what the hell's going on here? So because we thought in our infinite wisdom, let's just normalize everything to 1906. It's right in the middle of our year span. And Steve Tate said, "Oh, wait, what?" And he said, "Try 1900," and that was it. Everything was perfect. Wee Willie Keeler stopped striking out. But I just wanted to ask you that just for, again, the benefit of others. I know you talked earlier about the 5-10 year periods, but when we're talking about periods of baseball, is there a decade or era of baseball that you're more attracted to than others in your projects?
I don't know if this is the same for everybody. I'm sure it's not, but mine, I always come back to my sweet spot, which is when I started following baseball. So I'm kind of an 80s guy.
80s guy, okay.
80s music, 80s baseball, 80s.
So you're playing baseball and you're jamming to Rat, is what you're telling me, right?
Maybe not Rat, but
or maybe some synth pop, right? Some
synth pop.
Poison.
Yeah,
okay,
synth pop.
no synth pop. Okay, synth pop's cool,
Synth
right? Some
pop,
Flock of Seagulls and some
classic rock,
baseball.
Yeah, I'm rocking my Flock of Seagulls hairdo and wearing my
nice
sunglasses at night. And,
yeah, that's that other band from Liverpool. So okay, there we go.
I wear my sunglasses.
So no, that's really cool. And I mean, you talked about just being able to, and I'm like you, I could just talk about these sims for hours, and also the numbers. You talked about looking at the back of the baseball card. There have been nights on this channel where we fired up a baseball sim, but we just for hours in the community here just looking at stats. Yeah. And so that gets me to my question is, do you feel that stats are the reason that baseball is Bernie Strom, who's a member of our community, has his own channel, great guy, said that there was actually some polls and things done that baseball, out of all the 4 major team sports in the United States, it is the most simmed sport, like more than the other 3 combined.
Yeah.
Would you say that stats, it's because of baseball's the most statistically intensive? Would it be more of the pitcher batter matchup, that it's a team sport that's also individual? What would you be your thoughts on that? Because I didn't know that, but baseball does seem to outrank all the others in terms of players.
I feel like it's probably a little bit of all of that.
Thank you, Robert.
The numbers definitely play a big role. I think a lot of people, you remember, if I say 56, you know what that is, or 714, or 406, or
those mean something, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I think the other thing, like with and not not to knock any of the other sports, but like football, like what numbers can I give for a rating for like an offensive guard or a center, or I don't know. There's certain positions that have like no real numbers attached to them, I guess. Can you? Are there numbers now? Perhaps, maybe like, oh, this guy, whoever he was defending only, was only able to pressure the quarterback X number of times. I don't know.
Right.
There's probably kind of the equivalent of StatCast in the football side. I really haven't paid too much attention to NFL or NBA since probably my teenage years. I was a little bit more into all of the sports, and now I'm pretty baseball centric. But
no, then you're going to heaven.
I hope so.
You're going to heaven, brother.
Can't hurt, right?
That's right.
So yeah, I think numbers definitely play a big role in it. And I don't know also, where there are like card and dice, football or basketball games, but I don't know how well they really translate, because basketball is kind of a fast, football, at least you start and stop each play.
Right.
Basketball is kind of a flowing. Yes, there are fouls and the clock stops at different points in the game, but there's a lot of back and forth,
right,
fast break and different things. So I don't know how well that really translates, but I've never played those games, so I can't really say either.
Right, neither can I. I found that really interesting. For me, just being, I'm one of those weird people I'm not a sports fan. I'm a baseball fan. And so for me, there was never the kind of this interest to play in the other sports, but I've seen what other guys do with it. But it does seem to me to not only those numbers, but baseball shares is something that's very unique that we did touch upon earlier in that other discussion about cards and dice. Is Doris Kearns Goodwin talks about it in the Ken Burns baseball documentary. She uses a great analogy, right? The pitcher batter matchup. She likened that to boxing, and I thought that was pretty apt, because you think about it, right? You've got one guy out there, and there's 9 other people, right? And he's got to try to hit it so that it's safe, right? And none of the other 9 people are going to get to that ball. But then you've got one guy facing him that's got to throw a strike, but he's got to throw it in such a way, this round thing, that the other guy with the cylindrical object can't hit it, right? And so nobody can bat for you, nobody can pitch for you, right? Whereas in the other 3 sports, you can go to Michael Jordan all the time, or whatever great hockey player, or Bobby Orr, or whatever, right? Gretzky. But in baseball, that's it. It's you against him, and yes, there are the pitch counts and everything like that. But I think that's also maybe what makes baseball so fun to simulate, because that situation changes all the time. Ricky Henderson only came to bat once every 9 times, right?
Well, unless we do this silly golden at bat rule or whatever they're talking about.
Oh God, please.
Golden
please
at.
no.
I think I heard about
Please
the
no.
golden at bat rule. Is that like where they? I've heard about it, but I don't get it, and I really don't care to get it. But I've heard about that stupid rule before. They've been trying to think about implementing for a while.
I just hope that just kind of fades away and they never implement.
Is that the one where they have like one guy the whole game or something like that?
I think it's something like you can pick one at bat where it would be like, oh, it's the bases loaded and Mike Trout just struck out, but now I can hit him.
Oh God, I hope not.
Up to the bat.
But even more so, I just want Rob Manfred to fade away. I really do.
Just when you thought baseball couldn't get any more crazier than it is now with all the rules they got now, and the fact that, I mean, yeah, Manfred's not really a baseball fan. He's more of he's just a businessman. I mean,
he's a jadrul, as we say in Italian.
He's a jadrul. I mean, is anybody excited for opening day? I am.
No, but I am. You know what? For as much as they've messed up the game, I'm well. I mean, it is baseball season, so we already have had that.
Yes, it is.
So yeah, I'm stoked. I'm like, yes, it's baseball season, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm rocking my whole rat look, by the way. So I'm more of a metalhead, but nonetheless,
Yep.
But yeah, I still am, for as messed up as the game is. But that could be a deal breaker for me if they actually would institute that, because the idea of baseball. And look, as a Pirates fan, I still feel the pain of Francisco Cabrera, and always will. This guy comes out of nowhere and keeps us from going to the World Series. I don't want us to be. One of the beauties of baseball is you can't go to your best player. You can't. No. And right. I don't want that to happen. Oh my God, I don't want that to happen. I don't know how that's going to generate interest in the game, just as much as banning the shift increased interest in the game. That's a bunch of crap. But we do have baseball the way we want it in these sims at the end of the day. But I don't ever want there to be a time that I'm not excited about baseball. I mean, I'm 98 years old, gentlemen, so don't have a lot of time left.
I mean, I've seen the game evolve so much in my whole life, and
you're the kid in the community. You're 32?
35.
You're barely out of nappies, man. What's wrong?
I'm 35 years old, and it's like when I was just a mere baby. The Reds win the World Series
last year.
Shit. Yeah, the Reds win the World Series 4-0 against Oakland, and then games were a lot longer back then. Now it's like you can't even go take a whiz before the game's over with. That's how fast the game is.
I don't want but whatever. I don't care. When I go to a baseball game, I'm there. I don't care how many hours it lasts. I really, really don't care. What was that game that was oh my god, it was in one day, and it was fairly recently, so what I call modern baseball. And I mean, people were there almost the entire. It was like an 18-hour thing or something. I forget who that was. Houston was involved or something. I would have stayed for that entire 18 hours to be in the ballpark. Whatever, I'm there.
An
I love it.
18-hour game. I don't think I've ever heard of an 18-hour game before, but
It was like all these innings. I'll have to look it up in something.
it might have been
the 1985 Mets Braves was like 18 innings, and they set off the fireworks at 4 a.m.
It was 4 a.m.
Right?
Yeah. A lot. The weird thing is the whole broadcast of that game it doesn't exist. There's clips of it online, but yeah, I think there was a game. I think it was a couple years back. It was the Mariners and the Astros I think it might have been either a division series or something like that. Yeah, I think it was a division series, and it was like the Mariners were like facing elimination, and it went. I remember that it was a Saturday night, and I was just minding my own business watching YouTube videos. My brother's like, "Hey, put it on TBS." I'm like, or one of the Turner channels. I'm like, okay, and I put it on. I think it was TBS, and it says Mariners Astros. It's like Astros and Mariners, and it said that we're going to the 18th inning. I'm like, jeez. I mean,
I would have stayed for the whole thing.
I would
like,
too. I mean,
bring it on, give me more.
It's a freaking playoff game, for crying out. I mean, I remember watching that. I think my favorite game, playoff wise, in the past 20 years or more, would have to be game. I think it was 5 of the National League Division Series of 2005 between the Atlanta Braves and the Houston Astros. It went 18 innings. Roger Clemens had to come in and pitch relief work, and Chris Burke, who was a relatively unknown, who I think he just debuted that year, if I'm not mistaken, hits a walk-off home run to advance the Astros to the LCS against St. Louis that year. I mean, I'm like, I was hooked. I watched every pitch of that game on ESPN. It was amazing.
Aaron, I'm going to jump in here because while I have Derek here, I wanted to show a little bit more of what's going on this site. By the way, Derek, David Lando bought your book. Yay. So
awesome.
You let John know.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Real quick, while we're talking about long games, extra inning games.
Yeah, sure.
There's a book by Dan Barry called The Bottom of the 33rd. That was I think it was Orioles and Red Sox AAA.
Pawtucket and Rochester.
Yes.
Rochester for Orioles, Red Sox, Pawtucket.
There was like the umpiring crew, there was some mix up as far as when the curfew was, and it went beyond the 1 a.m. curfew, and I think they finally postponed it at like 4 a.m.
4 o'clock in the morning.
32nd or 33rd inning, and
32nd.
Jesus.
Love it.
I think
even the players were delirious after a while.
Cal Ripken and Wade Boggs played in that game.
They did.
Right?
Love it.
They did.
Love it. So, guys, among the things that you can get besides these awesome books, which you should get. So if you go here under simulations, Derek has all kinds of superb tutorials, and all these games are available, by the way. So here's for Tony La Russa Baseball 3, creating editing teams. The one I talked about already, or these two I've talked about already, Old Time Baseball and APA Baseball for Windows, doing solo drafts. All excellent stuff. Look, here's some stuff from Pro League Baseball, which again you can get. Create, edit your own teams. Full Count Baseball, which of course now Full Count Baseball is relevant again. Thank you very much, Jason Leonard, for all your hard work.
Baseball.
So guys, you should really check these out. If you have any of these old games on emulators or what have you,
DOSBox maybe.
Jump in and have fun. Derek has incredible, just incredible stuff on here on this website that you can definitely get lost. Derek, I mean, thank you for like all that you do in terms of just like guys like Mike Silva with his ballparks and ballpark mods and Mike Garland. you enrich our gaming experiences so very much, and on behalf of this community, I want to thank you. I really do.
I do appreciate that. I did want to mention one other thing.
Please do.
I'll probably drop off shortly, or you might hear me snoring here. So, my friend, who actually I met through, he had commented on my website after I had posted an article about baseball for Windows. This was several years ago. Andy Palomino. Maybe you can punch up his website. It's Baseball Sim Auctions.
I will do that.
And so we've been doing some stuff with our Saber Games and Simulations Committee with this. What he does is basically we'll take should be baseball sim. Oh yeah, Baseball Sim Auctions.
Let me put it as
put a space between those. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was thinking that was the URL, but let's just do it this way, and it should find it. And I should be using the Brave browser. Is this it?
That's the guy.
BaseballSimAuctions.com. All right, let's check it out.
So he uses Baseball for Windows. We basically.
He's my best friend now. Okay.
So he was running this unbeknownst to me. He read my article. We connected up, and I've been doing some of these leagues with him. Basically, the idea is we selected a handful of teams, and get a few guys together that can all meet up, through a Zoom call. And so Andy takes all those players, sends us the player list, and about a week or two later, we do an auction, like a fantasy league auction. Same, the dollar amounts and everything, and so you're sitting there bidding on, maybe it's George Brett 1980, maybe the one we did recently was kind of like the 5 most recent Hall of Famers, their best seasons, so we were, but it's every player from the team that they were on. So if there was like a Jeff Bagwell season, well, you've also got, Craig Biggio or Lance Berkman or whoever.
Mm-hmm.
And you're bidding on those guys.
Oh, cool.
And at the end of it, you put you have your roster, you set your lineups, you pick your micromanager, set your rotation and so forth. And then he simulates multiple seasons. The first guy to win 4 seasons is declared the winner. So it's like a World Series. So you 4 wins and you're the winner.
Oh wow,
that sounds kind of cool.
So if you win, like whoever has the most wins in a simulated season, that's called one win. Like that's equivalent to 1 World Series win.
That is so cool. Thank you for letting me know about this. I'm always trying to find things for baseball for Windows. So now, if somebody could just teach me how to for creating ballparks in that game, I would be in complete heaven. All the instructions are so weird in that to do it.
He just which is the generic ballpark. He does let us pick a micromanager. So if I get a team that's stolen base heavy or what so sometimes somebody will pick a Billy Martin or an Earl Weaver or whatever the case may be, but
I'd go with John McGraw all the time, but that's John me.
McGraw, I think
love John McGraw. He's my favorite.
A lot of Buck Miller too. I don't know. There's all these
Never heard of Buck Miller before.
There's different digital managers. I guess they're like the fan managers that.
Digital Skybox has all that stuff. So pretty cool. I don't know if you know that site or not, Derek. Good site.
I'll have to check that out. So, but this is a lot of fun. We do a lot of them during the off season. Gives you something to do while there's no baseball on.
Right.
But he is going to try to run at least one a month. So there's a contact somewhere on his page here. You can reach out to him and.
Oh, I definitely will. Wow, thank you.
If you're interested. So.
Wow.
Oh, definitely interested.
Yep.
Definitely interested. Derek, I'm so glad that you came on. And hopefully we can maybe sometime do this again. Maybe just pick get into, because we have Dwayne Martz here. By the way, Chris, there's a link in the chat if you want to join. Dwayne Martz, who just joined us. He's an absolute digital diamond baseball. Could let you guys just have fun with it. He's kind of like our community guru on digital diamond baseball. But I'd love to have you on again.
Sure.
Anytime you want to, you say you're about to nod off. I happen to be a vampire. That's my other job. So to me, it's still Saturday night. so when the sun comes up, then I think about it being Sunday. But until, and also huge thanks to John, too, and I'm hoping that anybody watching this afterwards, do please check out. I've had the website up there. Check it out. The books are fantastic. The resources are great. And for Derek to take the time tonight and for John to come on and hang out with us, thank you just a billion times. Seriously, Derek.
Oh, my pleasure. It was a lot of fun. Just one more thing while I've got
Please, while you're still awake, man. Go ahead.
Saber Baseball Gaming. Again, it's you don't have to be a Saber member if you want to check out our events. We've got the two coming up here, one in April, one in May. If you folks have any suggestions, or if you know anybody in the community that might be interested in talking to us and sharing their experiences, if you know anybody that's designed a game or that we haven't had on yet or anything like that, so reach out to us. And the other thing was that user access in the upper right corner, if you want to contribute an article on the website, if you want to just post something about your replays, there's the replay results link there. So
there it is. I'm going to bring on Chris hey Chris.
Hey, how are you?
So Derek, Chris is joining us from Islamabad.
Wow, excellent.
Yeah, he's a teacher over there. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing all right. It was Pakistan Day today, so they already had their parades. They flew all their jets like 5 feet above our houses, so now I can actually hear everything, and I can actually talk and actually hear everything now.
So Derek, you hear him talking. If you check out his channel, this is the guy that Appa's got to get. They got to get him. They got to get Legends. You listen to him. He said, "It's what did I say you sounded like one time, Chris? You're sort of like this cross between two guys, but on
the on-air version or the off-air version that
the on-air version. It sounds like you're at a ball game. He's excellent. So, Chris, do you have any questions or comments to Derek before he nods off?
Yeah, I would say I liked what you said about statistical fidelity. I'm wondering about when you do cross-season replays, like the best of the 90s or the best of the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
What do you look for in a good sim when you go across eras? And necessarily your season stats don't really mean too much.
I mean, to me, it's kind of all relative. Like, there's a lot of variables, right? So,
yeah.
How many teams are you including from those? Are you picking the best? All right, let's say I'm doing a 1985 to 1989, for example.
Okay.
Right? Well, I'm picking the best year from Don Mattingly and Dave Winfield and Darryl Strawberry and Doc Gooden and all these guys, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to skew the numbers because I'm probably leaving out a bunch of guys that had 5 ERAs and 200 batting averages.
Yeah.
Right? So somebody's got to hit 200 in that league, and maybe it's I don't know, pick somebody from the mid 80s who
Mendoza
maybe hit for So, but if I don't have
Mario,
poor Mario, you can't get your break.
Poor guy, right? But if I don't have Mario Mendoza in that because it's a greatest of that time period, right? Well, still the sim is going to have somebody bat low 200s, right?
Right.
Maybe that's Reggie, or who knows? But and the same with the pitcher, right? The guy with a 4 ERA, now he probably becomes a 5 ERA or a 5.50 ERA guy because somebody's got to give up those runs. So it's kind of all relative as far as like what the player pool is, I guess, is what
I was going to ask, have you ever played with fake players, and do you enjoy it? I enjoyed it a little bit more because you don't expect things. Like you don't expect, oh, here's Barry Bonds. Oh, he has to hit. It's just like, here's Joe Smith. And right now they're batting like 236 with 28 home runs. Have you ever done ones with fake players?
The only time I've done it is maybe a handful of times in like Front Page Sports, maybe one or two other games, but I'm kind of on the other side of the coin where I'm not fully invested because I like the narrative and the history of those players and having something invested with remembering like, oh, I had this guy's baseball card, or this guy was on my favorite team, or he was on my fantasy team, or whatever the case may be. So the fictional players, I can't really get into.
Me either. And for me, it's there's so much baseball history to learn that I just don't have. I mean, I get, Chris, where you're coming from, because you don't know what Joe Smith is going to do, that fictional player. But I'm still, all these years later, learning so much about baseball each time, whether I'm reading. And sorry, plug for Saber, guys. You got to join Saber, please. I mean, you don't have to be for this, but join Saber. It's great. Whether I'm reading an article, book, whatever, or playing a game, as Legend stated much earlier, right? You know, great ways to learn about these players. I mean, even players I thought I knew a lot about. You know, it's like, oh man, I didn't know that about this guy. I didn't know this about Elmer Flick, probably the most forgotten Hall of Famer, undeservedly so, a great player. So you know, I'm on that side of the coin too. I think I want to learn more. And like for me, my weak decade is the 1960s. So dead ball, that's my wheelhouse. But 1960s, oh my God, I can't name all the World Series winners in the 1960s, and that's pretty sad.
60s was a weird decade. You had the Minnesota Twins almost winning a World Series.
Right. Yes.
You had a lot of the New York Giants, the San Francisco Giants. They weren't bad in the 60s.
62, they had a damn fine team, man. They Mays, Cepeda. Come on.
Yeah. They I think there's just a lot of lost history because it's the last era before really television. When you go on YouTube, it's hard to find a full game from the 60s.
Yeah.
And the nostalgia and all that. And then in the 70s, you got the night World Series, you got the contract with ABC for World Series. It was really a production for a World Series rather than it was, oh, here's just the game.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Then that being so, it's like it almost followed the old F-ball productions, in the 70s. In the 70s, baseball's I would say it's a hard sport. You got 90% of the game pitcher.
It's not a television sport. It's not a television
TV sport. Yeah.
No.
And that's kind of the tough way, because to broadcast it, you need like 10 cameras to do it right.
Yeah.
And if you have 2 or 3, it's like, this looks like a Little League game. But I think when that happened, people could follow and get invested every night. Because although I love stats, people aren't going to love numbers. They're going to love people and seeing people and the drama and them celebrating. And that's all through TV. So I think that's why there's a big hole in the 60s.
Yeah, it's
there
just
are.
I don't know.
There are like little. I can't really say clips, but there are some channels that have like, I think Classic Baseball on the radio has like full games from the 1960s.
Yeah, but I mean, compared to again decades like 70s, 80s, and 60s are that's really my black hole of baseball. I'm lost. People will start talking about, certain players on the White Sox, for instance, and I'm like, who's that? And then I've got I've got to go and I've got to read up on this guy, or I've got to play a game, put him on a team, and sim some things out. So it is weird, but I'm working on it. Clinton Parks is kind of like our 60s baseball guy. But Derek, if you ever want to come on again, even when there's a broadcast, you want to come on and just kind of shoot the bull and talk some baseball. That's like with anybody here. You're always welcome.
We'll definitely do that, and I appreciate you having me on. And
anytime.
Yeah, I can definitely talk talk baseball sims for hours. And
yeah, maybe next time we can get Dwayne on here. As I said, maybe we could kind of do a little deep dive into Digital Diamond and what you guys, what you got. I mean, I have the game, I play it, but I'm nowhere at the level that I'm sure that I know I'm not where Dwayne is with it and with you either. I tend to, my four are, which we haven't even talked about tonight, is Diamond Mine Baseball, Baseball for Windows, Out of the Park, and Action PC. Those are kind of my go-to games. Among the tons that I own, those are the games I find myself playing the most. I get into Digital Diamond, I'm like, this is a cool game, but then I end up getting... So the way some people feel about Out of the Park is how I feel about Digital Diamond Baseball. I'm like, wait, I want to do this. How the hell do I do this? And so it's not as apparent to me as if I jump into Out of the Park Baseball, I'm like, boom, 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 I'm ready to go. So I would love to maybe get you guys talking together about Digital Diamond, especially, with the, I'm really excited about the Status Pro Full Edition. I played when I was a grad student, didn't have time to do the stuff, but as an undergrad, I remember we'd go to class and then we'd go back to the student union building at Penn State and just play Status Pro Baseball like madmen. It was awesome. So, well, Derek, again, too, even if I'm doing an Ernie Harwell game, man, I'll even we'll put Ernie on silent and just come on, man. Anytime you want, you're always welcome. And everybody knows that here. I love when people come on the mic because people get tired of hearing me. They do. So.
Yeah, no, Ernie is one of those, I've been, posting, replays of certain games, and, some of them you have to do the voiceover because there is no, there is no play-by-play or whatever. But generally, if I post an app a game, I just let Ernie run with it.
I mean, come on. That's why I tell people I'm the crappiest broadcaster in the community, but I happen to have the best broadcaster in the community, and that's Ernie Harwell. So, but Chris is a second. He's second. Yeah, Chris.
We all
you and Legends.
Most of us have Ernie Harwell on our.
Not enough.
Not enough. So, yeah.
All right. So, guys, don't forget. Just if you want to, just really quickly. Just Google Hardball Retro. It'll take you right to Derek's site. Enjoy it. There's all kinds of. We haven't even talked about. We haven't even scratched the surface of Derek in terms of his authorship, in terms of the people he's spoken to. And again, because he's not one of the children of the night, I don't want to task him with that. But maybe we get on another night and have a more focused talk about that. This is a guy that actually talked to Major League Baseball GMs, and we could talk about win shares, things that baseball geeks love. And I hope that Derek would be willing to come back and talk about those sort of deeper things that we more casual gamers, for lack of a better word, maybe don't think about. And it'd be nice to get that perspective. So, Derek, I hope you will consider doing this again at another time, and maybe we start a little earlier.
We can do the sequel, no problem.
Sounds great. Derek, thank you so much.
All right, take care. Thanks for having me.
All right, man. Sleep well.
All right, take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So, Chris, you still with us?
I'm still with you.
All right.
Is that hardballretro.com?
So it's Tuatara software, but so that's what you want to look for or listen for in your case. It's tuatarasoftware.com and then /hardball. I'll just do it here and bring it up.
Yeah.
So, Chris, what are you up to, man? What are you up to while I look up this for Aaron?
Well, there's a couple non-baseball things I'm looking forward to coming up. There's going to be a very solemn one in about a week. I'll be going. It'll be spring break, so I'm going to Cambodia. And
oh wow,
yeah, I'm going to go to that museum. The Killing Fields Museum.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah, and it's I think people take it different ways, but it's something you kind of got to do to kind of you got to see everything. History is not for kids.
It's not for kids. I know when I was living in Europe, I wanted to go to Poland and go to Auschwitz, and but the woman I was living with had no interest. I'm like, come on, this is important. But anyhow, please continue. So going to Cambodia.
Yeah, it'll be life changing and all that. And then
sure,
going back to Bangkok, I'll be there for 7 days. I want to see a couple soccer games. Their F-ball.
Right.
And their Port FC is good. I like the Muay Thai. Watching that. That's
Oh my God, that's crazy, right?
it's not as now. It's not as like people think it's like a Van Damme movie.
No, it's not
And
like that, but it's still tough. As I mean, is I guess,
oh
but
yeah,
yeah. Whew.
it's almost like watching a hockey game. Yeah, there's a lot of bumping and all that, but then there's that one crushing hit.
Right.
You know, so it's in a Muay Thai, it's the leg coming up. If you're not defending and you let that come up,
Look out.
oh, you're done. You're
Yeah.
done.
Oh yeah.
But it's so that, and I just want to see a lot of nature and stuff. Because
Sounds
here
great.
it's getting a little antsy here. You can't really get out of Islamabad because things are coming into the middle. So it's
You
not
just stay
like,
safe, man. You stay safe.
Yeah.
You know, we say that to you all the time. Stay safe.
well,
So-
you always know. Go ahead. So go ahead.
I was going to ask you, man. Do you have any fearless predictions about our Pirates this year?
Yeah. I think this is either going to be one of those years where it's really going to be a surprise, or
Mhm.
really going to be a bust. I
Yeah.
don't see a hey, we're building. I think they're just going to either break through this year
Mhm.
and contend for a playoff spot for a while until maybe August or September, or who knows, maybe longer,
Right.
or they're going to go all right for a week or two, and then it's going to be like they'll be like 48-71.
See, I'm
Yeah.
kind of afraid of. We're hanging so much in Paul Skeens.
Yeah,
right?
I was gonna say.
O'Neal Cruz has to stay healthy, but I don't think we made enough moves in the offseason, and I'm
Yeah, and
worried
what
about
you said
that.
before, I tried to make that as a great point. I think on my typing, I was like, hey, oh, great point. Like, not for myself, for you. And that when you're down by one, I always use this analogy. Okay, follow me. Okay,
Sure.
if you're down by one in basketball with 5 seconds to go, who do you give the ball to?
Your best player.
You're going to go to your best guy all
Best
the time.
guy. In
Yeah.
football, the New England, what quarterback do you want throwing a ball on a 4th and 5?
Brady.
4th and goal from the 5. Brady. Okay.
Right.
In baseball, who do you want up in bases loaded,
Bottom of the ninth, down by a
situation,
run.
Sure.
down by a run? The answer is who's ever up next.
Who's
on
ever
the
up
list.
next?
You
Who's
don't
ever up
pick.
next? Yeah.
And that's that. They better not do that. See, I don't mind speeding up the game to 1970s, which is the pitch clock. But what I don't, all those weird. We don't want to look. The Savannah Bananas are fun. You go there because it's a one-off experience.
Exactly.
It's a one-off. You kind of see things in a weird way. But if you were to watch them over and over and over again, it's not. You can't make a league out of it. And this
No.
I never heard of the golden batter rule, but that is the dumbest thing because I can see the DH because you want hitters hitting and pitchers pitching. I can see that, but not this golden batter. What the heck is that? What, you get to just put somebody in there? What the,
I know it's I think it's one of those things again where we asked you and then we listened. It's like you didn't ask me about anything. You didn't ask me about.
That's just
and the thing is
that's a cop out moment.
Baseball doesn't even have to look to the dead ball era. Look to the 1970s. Great decade for baseball, and everybody was fine with it. But now all of these changes. I'm telling you, Chris, I love baseball, but if they would institute that would not make me stop loving baseball. But I would quit following the currents. I would want nothing to do with it, and I would really bury myself in these sims if that shit happens. I'll say it.
Yeah, the IndyCar implemented something like that. They were looking when they split from kart, and the Indy 500 for about 10 years went down the tubes.
Right.
Then they got it back. They reconciled. It's back now. It's really cool. Not what it used to be, but it's back. But in trying to get back, they had some really huge mistakes. And some of the mistakes they made, one of the biggest mistakes was they implemented something called push to pass. It's almost like a video game when you got 7 nitros in your car. You'd push a button and you were allowed to like for 30 seconds or 15 seconds, go faster than what was allowed with the age. And it was so dumb because everybody would wait to the end, and then you wanted to be second place on odd laps, because then you go second to first, first to second, second to first. And it was so stupid. It's like a video game thing.
Right.
They have 8 push to passes left. Why don't we just drive normally? It's already got enough in there that it's exciting. Baseball is the only 4 of the 4 major sports where you're almost guaranteed to have a close game when you go to it.
Yep.
The good teams, everybody wins 60, everybody loses 60. It's
what you do with the others. Yep, exactly.
Yeah. And that's the thing. In basketball, most of the games are blowouts.
Yeah.
Like the 105 to 88. It's very rare. Hockey, they're close. They're close. NFL football, NFL is close. But if you go to a college game and all that, it's hard to get a close game, just the way
a lot of blowouts there.
But, so you don't need these weird golden batter rules, really.
I don't know. Whatever Manfred is drinking, I don't want any of it, because
baseball is not a one-man superstar sport. I mean, it's
so baseball is simultaneously a team sport and an individual sport, because right, because we're talking about it not being a television game. And if you think about it, and again, it's not, but when you go to the ballpark, you can, and that's what scouts do, right? Scouts don't go to watch teams. They go to watch a player, right? You can just watch that shortstop. And the things that you miss, like that I try to tell people, when you're watching baseball, right? When you're watching it on television, you don't get to see that subtle shift of the outfield or seeing them lean, right? Because who was it that said a good outfielder can tell where the ball's going as soon as he hears it? Right? You don't see those subtleties in baseball on television, but you have that pitcher batter matchup. You have what Legends was talking about earlier, pitch counts, things like that. So baseball is very, very situational. And while it is you have that team that's on defense, and of course, yes, baseball, the only sport in which the defense has the ball, there's when that ball is hit toward the third baseman, everybody's focusing on the third baseman. And in football, right? Okay, you can say that when the quarterback passes, listen to me talking football. Oh my God. And he's throwing it to one of those guys, the wide receivers, right? Boom. But there's this individual focus in baseball that no other sport has, really, right? Because what do they say also, to invoke the Ken Burns baseball documentary? Baseball's a haunted game. Every player is compared to the ones that came before. And you can. And I don't see that in the other games. And I think that's what makes the more they erode baseball's uniqueness, right? To try to bring in fans, you're not going to win the hardcore NBA fan by having a golden batter. It's not going to happen. You're not going to get the person who's an NFL fanatic say all of a sudden, hey, I love baseball because, Mike Trout gets to bat or Aaron Judge gets to bat at this amazing time. It's like, no, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I think what they did, and you're going to see this, the NBA blew up around the world, but now it's blowing up now because they went short term and not long term. And what they did short term was David Stern marketed the players. So if you think about the NBA in the 80s and the 90s, we all knew Jordan, but we also knew Dikembe Mutombo, Larry Bird, Robert Parrish. We knew like every team had 1 or 2 players. We even knew Derek Harper, Patrick Ewing, stuff like that.
Right.
But what happens is when you go into a league and then you market those players and then all of them have a mass exodus at one time, and you don't like the game, you like the players, and you grew up with the players.
What are you going to sell?
Once they're gone, you go do other things. With baseball, they're trying to get the young kids to love individual players, and that's nice. But you got to love the sport, not the players. And you do it by. I always said, if you really want to grow the game of baseball, you take a section of seats that are right near the pitcher and the batter, and you make them $5 seats, just a little section. That way kids can get up to it. The problem with baseball is, in the old days, the Pirates, now I could talk about Three Rivers with you.
Sure.
Three Rivers Stadium, I could get even when I was in college, I could get a seat behind third base for $15.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
and you could take a family for 60. Yeah,
Mhm.
I know people were complaining back then, but still, 60 was good.
Oh,
back
hell
then.
yeah. Hell yeah.
Now it's 90 a seat. Like
Yeah,
people don't like if you want to introduce, you can't take a kid and put him in the outfield of a baseball game and go, look at those dots running around and expect that kid to pay attention or like it. But if you
Right.
put him near the pitcher and the batter, and you have the pitch clock and all that, but that will keep the kid like, wow, engaged. There's my hero 40 feet from me.
Well, and here's proof to your argument. Just go to a minor league game. And that's what you see. And you see kids are engaged. And yeah, I mean, the owners need to get back to that whole. Well, you remember the Buccos? Remember we used to have like the Knot Hole Gang and stuff like that.
Oh, Dad was part of one, yeah.
You know,
back in the 60s.
Yeah, and I mean that was cool stuff. And baseball needs to get back to those roots and quit being gimmicky. Just stop, because I don't know anybody. The people I'm staying with, they're all football fans. All of them. They are hardcore football fans. What am I going to do? I'm going to say, hey, yeah, but there's, they made the bases bigger and the pitcher can only throw over twice. So you guys are going to really love baseball now. No, that's not going to work. It hasn't worked. I can't get them interested. Of course, they can't get me interested in football because I don't care. They don't care. But what you're happening is you're getting people, Chris. Like I've asked here in this community, how many people are, a lot of people are like, I don't really give a damn about 2025 baseball or 2024 baseball. And what are we playing? Most of us in our baseball sims, we're not playing 2024. We don't want to play that game. We want to play 1979, or we want to play, in my case, 1905 or whatever. Jamie here says, no more newspapers and box scores that help sell the game. He's right. Baseball is the only sport where a box score means anything. Right. And now you can't, they're no more.
And that's another thing is we used to,
thank you, Jamie.
Stole this when we were little. People used to go around and used to like gamble a little bit. Used to take box scores when we were, high school. And I learned later that they kind of stole it from a book or whatever, where you pick 3 players, 3. It doesn't matter which 3, and you pay $5. And if they get 6 hits, you win $10.
Yeah.
So if they get a total of 6 hits, so that's hard to do. And what that really does is it makes you really look at the game and the sport and see who they're playing and the pitchers matchups and all that. But the thing with football is, and I'm going to equate it to baseball, is
sure
the way they're trying to do it now in football. When I was little in football in the 80s and the 90s, when you watched a game and your team got a first down, you cheered because it was something when you just got a first down. You got to midfield, that was big. When you got to the 20-yard line, you were holding your breath.
Right.
Like, oh, we need this touchdown. We never get or field goals. Right? Steeler fan, Gary Anderson. Everybody knew Gary Anderson, the kicker, not the quarterback.
Right.
So we had that. And the thing I think with baseball is they're getting away from the nuances. And same with football, where football is, oh, touchdown or no touchdown. Just let me know when we get into 20. Rather than that, and I think it all does also with the announcing too. If you think of the announcers in all the sports in the 80s and the 90s, they made you want to know what's going on. Like Joe Morgan, he's like, yeah, watch this. He's going to do this. They're going to do that. And, with all the, now today they dumb it down. So you don't appreciate all of the stuff in the game. And the best example I could say is Americans watching soccer. When we watch soccer, we're just like, we don't care. There's like 2 shots on goal. Anybody else is like, hey, look what they're doing in the midfield. Hey, look at that. They're pushing people up. Hey, they're doing this, blah, blah, blah. And I think in baseball, we're losing that. We're losing that.
We're losing that. And the baseball commissioner and they're not seeing that. And they're not seeing the forest for the trees. They're not seeing what made baseball great, that it was our national pastime and why it was. And I don't think it's the problem of the pace of the game. Sure, if you want to speed it up, that's cool. That's not it. I think that with the advent of people like Rob Manfred, in my opinion, so I don't get sued here because we're very litigious, as you know, is that let's make baseball right. It's moving away from itself every year. And I like what you said about the Savannah Bananas. I watched a game. It's like, okay, this is fun, but I can't invest myself in this. This is like, where you've got, in the crowd, right? Okay. It's just, it's gimmickry. And it's like, I'm so scared that Major League Baseball's next step is good. Let's look at Banana Ball and let's start doing what they're doing. And maybe that would be really fun for the fans if they caught a ball and it's an out. My God, it could happen, Chris. It could happen.
The easiest fix to baseball, to get baseball huge again, is keep the speed of pace up. That'll be good. But you got to lower the prices.
Oh, yeah.
And you got to make everybody interested. Right now, it's just New York and Los Angeles. You know, what family wants to spend $360 for 4 people to go out to a game when they know the team isn't going to be the best? They're not going to make any memories like that. That's the one thing with baseball is the tension sells it. When you believe in it, when you know the people, it's so much better. And the thing that they're doing now is they're trying to market the game to people who can afford those seats. Right. And right now that never has worked in any league. And with the people that afford those seats, a lot of them are hurry up. Oh, this is nice. I'll do this once or twice. With the real fans you need to develop are in the outfield going, let's see, dots for baseball, but in basketball, I can sit down here and see that. And in hockey and all that, it's, but it's different in baseball because the action in basketball, you could be back a little bit. Hockey, same thing. Baseball.
Yeah, it's not a bad seat in the house. Not a bad seat in the house in those sports.
Baseball, it's so concentrated in that one area. It's like, how in the world, like, you got to be able to sit. That's why all the seats are around that ring,
and the other thing that baseball, I think, again, needs to recognize are the good things about itself that it could sell. To me, baseball is the most difficult of the 4 team sports. Not the roughest, but it is the most difficult. I mean, come on. What Ted Williams say about hitting a baseball? And I think he's right. Come on, the best hitters fail 70% of the time. It's a difficult game. Only 0.5% of people that start in rookie league ball even make it to the majors, and only a small percentage of them actually stay. I mean, we slam on Harold Baines all the time, but let's give Harold Baines some love. He stayed in the majors and had a long career, and it wasn't just because Jerry Reinsdorf liked him or whatever. Harold Baines was a hell of an athlete, and to make it to the majors and to stay there, you're the elite. You're the elite.
Well, think about how many skill sets. If you're Tom Brady, you don't have to know how to tackle.
Exactly.
If you're Michael, if you're Stephen Curry, okay, you shoot threes. Do you play defense? In hockey, you have defensemen that are in a certain area that push a puck up. In baseball, you got to do it all.
You got to do it all.
Specialize maybe in a position, but you also have to learn to catch a ball, read it off the bat. You have to be able to hit a bat. You have to be able to hit. You have to be able to blah, 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 blah. You have to be able to do all of that. And that really, you can't be jack of all trades. So that's why teams are unique. You got heavy hitters and heavy defenders. That's why I still say Mazeroski should be in the Hall of Fame because he did all of the stuff that the numbers don't say. His skill set was defense, and he was a very good defender. And if you're the best at something, you got to be in the Hall of Fame if you're the best.
If you're the best.
And he was the best. He was the best double play guy the Pirates ever had, one of them. That's a Hall of Fame thing, but there's numbers aren't as good looking for that as a 300 average or 500 home runs. So it's, with all of that skill set, you're right. And not only do you have to do it all, but when you're in crunch time, you don't pick who's up.
No.
Bain picks it. You know,
exactly. And to imagine, getting back to this sort of golden bat type thing, could you imagine in the seventh game of a World Series and you're down 1 run, right? And the way we know it is, as you said, Chris, whoever's next up in that bat, whoever's on deck is who's up next. Now, right? So you have LA in the series, kind of foregone conclusion again this year, I guess. LA's there. Ohtani's hitting, right? So he hasn't pitched for a few days and what have you. And Ohtani he might have just, again, as Derek said, struck out, but now he's up to bat again, and then he cranks one. That's just that deflates everything. Because again, Chris, you still, come on, man. All these years later, we still feel the pain of who was Francisco Cabrera. Right.
Yeah.
And then to rub salt in the wound, our own Sid Bream comes around and, the rest is history. And that's what makes baseball cool. Nobody knew that.
Right.
You talked about Rick Camp earlier, or I don't know if that was you or Dwayne.
No, that was me. I said Rick Camp game. That was that long game. Yeah.
Bucky Dent. Somebody mentioned the Bucky Dent game, right?
That was me also. Yeah. I said, what about Bucky Dent? Because I was playing off. What you were saying is,
right,
all the unknowns and all of the unknown stuff and unknown heroes. When you look in the World Series, really, when you look at a World Series, you don't say, "Oh, Ohtani hit 8 home runs and all that." No, because he's being pitched around. It's
exactly.
the nobodies that have to come up and do something. And once they do that, it's like you hear about again Bucky Dent back then, and you hear in the 80s, you
midlife crisis saying, "Who's Gene Larkin?"
Yeah. Who had the winning hit for? What about Craig Counsell?
Exactly.
2001. What about Jay Bell in 2001?
Billy Bates.
Yep.
Yeah. What about who was that 91 that got the game-winning hit in Game 7?
Larkin. Gene Larkin.
Was that him? They won the World Series through him,
Yeah, it was Gene Larkin. Because Gladden was on. I think Dan Gladden was on base.
Yeah,
it's like the baseball is the unsung heroes game practically. I mean, it's like you have your stars, but it's like it's always the least known player who can shine the bright. I mean, look at like you mentioned Francisco Cabrera. No one knew who he was until and it's like he hits the game-winning hit against Stan Belinda in the LCS and puts the Braves to the World Series. I know that's still fresh in the back of your minds, even though you'd rather forget about it. But it's like,
who was in '97? Who had the hit '97 for the Marlins?
Edgar
They
Renteria.
bought that World Series, but in '97, who was that had the hit?
Edgar Renteria.
Edgar Renteria, right there. Good player, solid player, but you're not giving him the ball down by 2 in an NBA game.
No,
right.
He's the guy, 6-man coming off the bench. So I agree with you. It's like that, and that's the one thing. That's why I think number one, you got to get I know you got to get a salary cap in baseball.
Yeah,
you have to, and you can. My whole thing is this: you get a salary cap that you get in baseball for everybody to make a different amount. Then anything baseball brings in that the players deserve over that salary cap money, you distribute equally to all of them. So let's say baseball brings in a ton of money, okay? And we have a salary cap, and I make $25 million a year, and you make $3 million a year. Well, with the salary cap, I might make $20 million a year on the salary cap. Maybe I'm a big star of a team, but everybody in baseball then would get a dividend check for like $400,000 to put on top of that, because that would get everybody promoting themselves. That would get the game. I think the biggest thing for the NBA wasn't the NBA promoting Michael Jordan. It was Michael Jordan promoting himself through Nike shoes.
Oh, sure. Everybody, yeah.
That's what baseball needs, is they need the players on their off days to go out and promote themselves and to promote the games. If you
And
do
stop
that,
charging people for autographs, for fuck's sake. What?
Yeah.
So one of the people that I said they were all football fans. One guy used to be a baseball fan, went to a baseball game, and I forget the player that he wanted to get an autograph. And the guy's like, "Yeah, $20." And he's like, I'm here because I like you as a player, $20. And that was it. He said, I'm done. And it's like, come on. Because baseball players, you see pictures of Ted Williams, the greatest baseball player of his era, out there just signing balls for people and not charging people. And Bob Feller signed more baseballs than God. I mean, he did. That's why Bob Feller balls aren't worth that much, because he signed so many. But he signed them for the fans. And as a fan, Chris, I feel as if baseball has become this juggernaut and it's just mowing us down. And the idealist in me would like to say, we can save this game, because all through the history of baseball, people always were predicting its death and it didn't die. But yet I'm worried about it now. As a student of the history of the game, man, I think its existence is in greater peril than it ever has been. More than 1990. People are talking 1994. Baseball's dead. Baseball came roaring back. But I don't know this time.
I think this if people listen, which I hope they do, I hope the right people listen to this, because you got on it. But I think I'm going to go one up a little bit on this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say the reason why it always came back in the past is because of the connection people had. If you take somebody from Germany or Russia or Ethiopia or something like that, and you put them in a baseball park, they will be bored.
Yes.
The reason why we like it is because we get a connection about it when we're a kid.
Sure.
It's a non-contact game. We could play as a kid. It's really simple in the fact when you're a kid, you hit a ball, running bases. We learn the nuances. You can play a lot. You don't have to worry about playing one and getting beat up, so I need a day break. It's the connection. So in the past, would they looked at it as a business thing, not looking at the connection with people. Now, today it's different because they're pulling that connection away. And when you pull that away, people won't come back to it because you need to develop the connection in 5-year-old kids. You need to put those Little League baseball teams in the front row when they get their free tickets. So all the time in the front row, so that they don't choose to play basketball or football or hockey now. Because all of a sudden, if you look at Penguin games, where are they putting those kids? On the front row, in there, because they are developing connections.
Doing what baseball used to do, because baseball used to do that. Yeah, they'd even have these Little League kids out on the field. Imagine, right? You're back in the 1970s, even 1980s, right? And you're in a Little League team, and all of a sudden you've won your championship. And let's say you're just out in Kansas City, and you're out there in Kauffman Stadium in the field. Imagine what a thrill that is. And baseball is taken. They're just
And you wonder what is it? ESPN.
So Chris, you're right. And ESPN, this is their last year for baseball coverage, I heard.
That shocked me when I heard that.
It doesn't shock me at all. It shows me the sad state of the game that ESPN's saying, we're done.
I mean,
we're just done.
They've done away with Bally Sports. There's no, like...
So, Aaron, I don't know if you're old enough to remember. No, Chris and I are.
I remember.
You used to be able to just tune into your local radio station and listen. Man, I used to listen to Pirate. Even when I was in college, man, my best friend in the 90s, my best friend and I would be out having a catch, and we would have a Bucko game on the radio. Can't do that anymore.
When I was
it's forget it. If you don't have MLB Network, you're screwed, man.
When I was in school, I remember I used to take my little radio and I would tune in we had there was a local station in Louisville where I went to school that would carry Reds games.
So you are old enough to remember hearing local. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, but it's like but it wasn't every single day. Like you might get something like a game like a couple nights, and then they would take it like a night off, and then all of a sudden,
either way, to baseball's peril, Jamie, I would say.
It's
go ahead, Aaron.
All of a sudden, they start doing the channel that normally did Reds games was now doing their AAA affiliates. So you get like Louisville Bats games and what have you.
Yeah.
And I didn't like the stations that would do a Reds game one night, and then they would do nothing for like a few days, then do a Reds game one night, do nothing for like a few days. I mean, it's like if you're gonna do Reds games, do Reds games, for example, or like and late at night, like if you're listening to radio late at night, you could pick up stations from out of state. I picked up a few Atlanta Braves games a few times, and the Cardinals.
But here's the
Like-
thing.
Oh,
Here's
go
the
ahead.
thing. Just going on, Chris, with and Aaron, what you're saying too. So again, I'm going to use my favorite. Chris and I, our favorite baseball team. Going to use the Pirates as an example. Our AA minor league affiliate is 98 miles away from Pittsburgh, and in a city in the mountains called Altoona. It's the Altoona Curve. It has a wonderful ballpark. It sits adjacent to an amusement park, and hitters love to aim at this neat old roller coaster that's there. But the thing is, right, so kids are going to see these guys. They move up to the big club, and Chris was talking about that price point. Now all of a sudden, so like even kids that saw Kutch when he was playing for the Curve, right, their families can't afford to take him to PNC to see Kutch play. It's too high, right? Back in the day when you had local stations that were covering the Pirates, or I don't want to talk about the big stations that covered the Cubs, and they always had that, but I'm talking about small market teams. There was a connection there, and so I thought this was brilliant. The Buccos have now put a AA club 98 miles away from the city, not even 2 hours, but yet the disconnect is huge. It's huge because minor league baseball is super affordable. I love going to see the Harrisburg Senators here. I'm not a Washington Nationals fan. That's their farm club. I can go and enjoy baseball, and there are kids there enjoying it, and it's fun. People love the game. But you go to the majors, and baseball and it's still, for as expensive it is, still the cheapest of the major league sports to go see. But it's ridiculous. And as you say, Chris, who has that $340, $360 to do it? And then with the concessions and everything, baseball needs to get back. The only way it's going to save itself in a weird way is to go backwards in some ways. It's got to.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think it's the best thing with this, with all the Bally sports and all that losing it, because when we were kids, remember Beatles, it was Channel 22 that carried the games. KDKA used to carry the games. They had their local announcers.
Yep.
They had Steve Blass and Lenny Fratteri.
Lenny Fratteri, man. Yeah.
And they used to do that, and they used to carry. And I think now what they did was they got these corporate people in doing these games that are basically
they don't know the clubs.
Myron Cope was a very big fan.
Myron Cope.
Myron Cope and Steve Sable were best friends. People forget Myron Cope was one of in the 70s best sports writers in the U.S. And he was friends with Howard Cosell, and he was friends with Steve Sable. And John Facenda had died. And John Facenda, that voice that did that and all the old
of
stuff.
the Midway, the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, he talked about the plastic suits. I think this was 1984. They talked about the plastic suits and how NFL films, if you think about it, went downhill. Because I never knew this. John Facenda was going to be fired from his sports position in Philadelphia because he wasn't a suit. And then he picked up this gig, became nationally famous, and that saved his job. Now, remember, for Terry and Steve Blass is not going to make a Steve Blass type guy. It's not going to make a national, like Bally Sports or anything. They're going to give a suit there. But yet he was really good at what he did.
He was.
Same with Lenny Fratteri. They were really good, but they would never make it under the suit guys who talk at 2/3.
You know who else wouldn't have made it? One of the greatest of all time that wouldn't have made it is Bob Prince. Wouldn't have made it. Ernie Harwell wouldn't have made it. Red Barber.
He got fired because of it. Remember it?
Yes.
He said he called it a Hoover, and he got fired.
Yeah.
Because he called it a Hoover.
Yeah.
So they fired him. They said, that's not our sponsor. You can't use it.
Who?
And you
they fired
see that
Harwell or they fired Prince?
They fired Bob Prince.
Oh.
Yeah, Bob Prince. Yeah, Bob Prince was sad.
And you saw that in Baltimore happen 2 years ago. Yeah. This guy was doing Baltimore games. He was a young guy, and he was really, really good. And they did a game, and he gave an opinion. And Baltimore Orioles said, you can't give that opinion. It was something about the owner. They said, well, the owner has to invest more in pitching than hitting because blah, blah, blah.
They said
And
you
they go,
can't
you
say
can't
that.
give that opinion. He goes, it's a true opinion. They go, okay, here's mine. You're fired.
Yeah.
So they remember that guy was 2 years ago.
I'm trying to remember his name, Chris, but yeah, I know what you mean. I can't remember his name right now.
That you mentioned John Facenda. I remember when he died in 2003. I think it was the day I came home from school one Friday and I was watching ESPN because I wanted to see if they were still showing Sports Center from the night before. Because sometimes they would. It was always, if they weren't doing any actual games, they'd have Sports Center on repeat over and over and over and over and over again.
Oh, I remember that.
Well, they were doing like a tribute to him, and because apparently, but somebody had said in the thing, oh, John Facenda passed away at the age of 80-some years old or something like that.
71 and
71
84.
years old, and they were doing playing these like clips of his NFL.
Kevin Brown.
Yeah, Kevin Brown.
Chris, to answer your question about Baltimore, it's Kevin Brown.
Yeah,
Okay.
he got fired for he having an opinion about a team. It's like, but yeah, I remember when Facenda died, they did like a tribute for him, and it was just like the Oakland Raiders of the John Madden soldiers led into the battlefield of let's say of Three Rivers Stadium, where the mighty Steelers look to shut them down once again.
But baseball broadcasters did that back in the day. The broadcasters that we're talking about, they built that drama, and they weren't constrained as being suits. And it just dawns on me again that the great broadcasters in baseball would have all been fired, including Vin Scully.
They would have fired them all.
I mean, and Vin Scully. I mean, and you would hear. I remember, and so do you, Chris, listening to Pirate games where Lanny Fratteri would be like, "This was, they just said what they said," and the Pirates weren't like, "Well, you're out of here now."
Harry Carey would have been gone.
Oh, Harry Carey!
Oh, they would have fired Harry Carey
exactly.
A long time ago. Marty Brennan would have gotten fired too.
All of these guys would have.
Do you know who was the best?
And we're stuck with Joe Buck. That's what we're left with, man. Come on.
Yeah.
Buck's not doing baseball.
Jack Buck was good.
Jack Buck was a legend. Yep.
But look at his voice. Today we would have never been hired because of his voice.
Exactly.
One of the best.
Harry Callis, same thing.
Harry Callis would have never been.
Nope.
I guess the best underrated baseball announcer that did national games, most underrated, and he ended up for the San Diego Padres, and I had a chance to meet him, and I said no, I never got another chance, and he died. Was Dick Enberg.
Yeah, he was a really good baseball announcer.
Drama. He
Oh,
was the best at making drama, and just like when you watched a game, he was telling a story, and he knew when the climax of that game was. He knew the point where it was good, or he knew the point when it was all over. And the thing that would get him fired is you're not allowed to do that today. You're not allowed today in a baseball game with the bases loaded down 4-0. And your best hitter strikes out to go, that's it, it's all over. I don't know how they're going to do this again.
Right.
That's kind of like, Chris, when I'm listening to the MLB app on the phone, I hear the radio feeds of games. It's like you can almost feel the depression when, like, let's say when I was listening to the Indians, I still call them the Indians, Yankees Indians in the ALCS last year. I was listening to the Hamilton and Jim Rosenhaus, and freaking, I'm like, Hamilton's about ready to. It's like he's about ready to cry, listening to the Guardians just lose, and it was like, I'm thinking he would have gotten fired back in the day for that. I mean, you're not allowed to you're not allowed to express emotion. It's like, oh, we're done. I mean,
it's big corporate bucks coming in there, and I'm not, it's just sad to think about it, but there you go.
Marty, like you mentioned, Harry Callis. I mean, they get these guys who are like, Charlie's. Let's see. I mean, I'm trying to think of guys who are who call games today who are
A lot of them, they're from out of town.
Yeah.
So they're out of town and they're trained in this way. So when they go, like they're trained that to be a homer, you can't be a real homer and do everything about the team and talk and do that. No, you're a homer because you just yelled at an umpire when you don't get a call. That's what being a homer is today.
That's like, what's his name? Larry Anderson, who does Phillies games. I mean, I don't know if he still does it now, but when I first heard him, he was like, just, oh my God, he would not shut up. I mean, or no, I'll tell you one who was, and I've grilled this guy so many times in my life, Ken Harrelson.
I remember him.
That guy was and is, he's not doing it anymore, but was, Ken Harrelson?
Yeah, Hawk.
I think he's, let me, you got me curious, but he was a homer.
Oh yeah.
Let's see. Ken.
He also wasn't sober on the air.
Oh man, I've heard that too.
Like, he would just absolutely. He wasn't sober, and he would. When I worked my internship, the best guy I got to talk to was Bob Uecker, and I knew the best thing in the world was this. I knew when I was sitting.
He's 83 years old. He's still alive.
Bob Uecker? No, he's dead.
No, he died, Aaron.
No, Ken Harrelson's still alive. He's 80.
Oh, yeah.
Uecker passed away this year, but go ahead.
Yeah. Bob Uecker, I knew that when I'm sitting at the table, I had to shut up. I had to. I would not only, and look, I know we're broadcasting, but
it's all good, man.
I'm trying to say it in a way that if by some miracle, somebody I have worked with, in the teaching industry, you get a lot of people that feel that they have to always interject them because it's the nature of the job. When you're a teacher, you're in control of a classroom, your opinion matters, blah, 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 like that. Mm-hmm. And we have a lot of people that would try and, not at our school right now, but through working through 5 different schools, 6, 7, 8, 9 different schools, there are a lot of people that would try and interject themselves and try and say, oh, we'll try and make a point where he said, good point, or something like that. But that just brings down a conversation. Mm-hmm. Whenever you have a guy like that, that just brings down you got to know just to shut up and let the guy talk. Mm-hmm. The guy's amazing, and you're making the conversation dumber if you talk. So I sat at those tables absolutely silent, listening to these unbelievable stories about hotel rooms and after hours and all this stuff. Every time Milwaukee played the Pirates, I'm like, all right, this is great.
There's Bob Uecker in town.
Yeah, the guy
got the Miller Lite.
Yeah, the guy really liked talking to was Chuck Tanner. I actually knew, I got to really know Chuck Tanner. He was the Pirates manager when they won the World Series. He was just like everybody else. Normally, he's like, hey, how's your family? How's this? How your cat's doing? Your dog? Blah, 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 like that. From Newcastle,
Tommy Lasorda was the same way.
Who was?
Tommy Lasorda. I mean, he always asked the players, how's the family? He was really close to his players. I mean, Weaver also was very defendant of his players too. I mean, but you mentioned Bob Uecker. Bob Uecker is the kind of guy that I would have loved to have met and sat and talked baseball with for hours. I mean, just to hear the stories. I mean,
oh yeah,
82. I mean, the freaking wall bangers, for crying out loud. I mean, his playing days. Nobody wanted him, from what he said. I mean, it's a shame. He was 90 years old when he died. But just to hear him call the Brewers in the postseason last year I'm like, just, I mean, it was so cool. I mean, I'm thinking this might be his last, God willing.
The one vibe I got from him though is, and I learned this, is whenever you have a personality like that and stuff, he had kind of an entourage around him, like a very close circle around him. At those media buffets, I was on the other side of the table, and there'd be he would be there, and on one side of the table was one guy that never talked in his life, Jim Leland, because he was a talent scout in 2002 for the Cardinals. He wasn't with Detroit yet. And on the other side, there's me and Chuck Tanner, and we're both quiet and just listening. And then afterwards, there was like this debriefing where Jim Leland would say absolutely nothing. And then Chuck Tanner would be like, hey, what do you think of this guy? I said, I didn't believe that he, like, my goodness, that went from G-rated to X-rated in less than And I looked at him and I said, how do you turn it off? Like, how do you turn it on and off? Like that. He goes, well, there's a reason why he's a professional. If you make it past 10 years, you got the ability to do it. It's just natural. Because he would F this, boom, F.
Damn.
Oh, what either? And what? Oh, dag nabbit. What a bad play by, whatever.
What a bad play by.
Yeah, and his stories he told on the air, he was so funny. The stories he
I
threw on
laughed
the air
so
were
hard
throwaway
listening to
stories.
him.
These were the worst stories. So what you actually heard from him were the throwaway, the worst stories. His stories were a billion times. Hey, he reminded me of Drew Carey. I got called down on The Price is Right in 2017. I still have the video. And Drew Carey off the air is funny as heck. Swear words, everything. Swearing doesn't make you funny, but it's the timing of the language.
Drew Carey's hilarious.
He's even better off the air. And he told this joke about the farmer in Ohio. If you got time, I could tell you it takes 2 minutes.
Ohio.
He goes, there was this farmer plowing in the fields, and one day a voice said, sell the farm, take the money, go to Vegas. And the guy's like, no, I'm going to keep going. 2 weeks later, he's in the hot fields and sell the farm, take the money, go to Vegas. And he's like, what the hell? Where's this coming from? Whatever, like Field of Dreams. I mean, he's in the field in July and it's baking up. Sell the farm, take the money, go to Vegas. He goes, you know what? I'm going to do that. So all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he sells the farm, takes the money, and he goes to Vegas. And they said, stay at the Luxor Hotel. Make sure it's on floor number 12. So he goes, all right, here's it. Goes in the Luxor Hotel and stays on floor number 12. And then it goes, go down and put all of your money on the roulette machine, on the roulette wheel. He goes, all right. So then that night, but it's got to be on this certain day, a Wednesday. So Wednesday, gets up, puts it on. They spin the wheel, and he puts all of his money on red 14. And black 12s come up. Black 12s come up, and the voice says, oh, shit.
Oh my God.
So you can't tell that on the air. You can't, you gotta, even in comedy clubs, that's not but when you go to a Price is Right taping, you have to be over 18. He's himself. He says, his comedy there, it's just like he talks. Oh my God, it's just good just to go in, watch a taping to hear him. Oh my God, it's great.
That's
Drew
funny.
Carey's done a lot of filling of Bob Barker's shoes in the whole year since he's been doing the show.
Yeah, but he's not. Well, never mind. I was going to talk about Bob Barker filling other stuff, but we'll leave it at that. Guys, we are at 3 hours and 38 minutes, so I think we're going to call it. Chris, thank you for joining in, man. Appreciate it, guys.
I'm gonna
check out Chris's channel. Check out Aaron's channel.
Yeah.
Check RGL. I know you're long past asleep, and
did you see my new?
Yeah.
Did you see my new?
I haven't yet, dude. That's going to be tomorrow's project.
Do you want me to tell you what I'm doing?
Yes. Tell everybody. Tell the world.
What I'm doing is when I go to bed on Out of the Park Baseball, I have 12 teams from the 1980s. Okay. So what I do is when I go to bed, I turn it on real-time simulation, and my broadcast will go for 8 or 9 hours, and it's real time. So you
Oh
can
my
watch the
God.
league while you're doing work. You can watch it live, doing that while you're doing work. You can,
Oh, that's cool.
yeah. So you could go back and forth. So if you're working on something, go back. You feel a little tension when somebody's up because they'll show you like, oh, base is loaded. We're down 2-0.
Is
And
there
then
any
you see
sound with
everything
that?
disappear and you're like, oh, crap. But
That's cool. That is cool.
and what I
think
do
I
at the
saw one of
beginning of the
those.
episode
No pun intended.
is I do the standings. And at the very, very end, I do the standings, box scores, and statistics really fast. So you could see, oh, all right, well, this ended here. I could see it's like reading the newspaper the next day, seeing the box scores and a little write up. And then I show the standings.
Well, I'm
So-
definitely going to check that out. And you know what? I've been looking for stuff to do that works. So good. I'll be tuning in definitely to that. That'll be
As far as
fun.
my channel is concerned.
So, guys, it was really cool to have Derek and John tonight. And just for Robert, he's not going to catch this later. But just message to everybody here about the cards and dice thing and digital thing. Again, I think that we're going to always have that. There's going to, unfortunately or fortunately, depending upon which side of the fence you're on, we're always going to have that kind of thing, right? It's sort of like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, whatever, McDonald's, Burger King. At the end of the day, play what you love. And Robert respectfully submitted, I don't think that computers cheat just because we can't see the dice. But that's where I come from as starting out as a digital gamer. Again, like Derek, he started out baseball gaming as a digital gamer, not cards and dice. So I don't have that same connection. I don't really see why you would even have to create that. Now, all of that being said, though, I think Robert makes a good point about how visceral cards and dice are, because you're touching things, you're moving things around and all that, and you're if you're playing status pro the way it should be, not dice but fast action cards, you're flipping fast action cards or whatever. I get that, and for guys like Robert, and he has said this in the channel, that for him there's a disconnect with clicking a mouse as opposed to rolling dice. I get that. For me, not only I don't buy the closed engine thing, never did. But I prefer digital baseball because I can do more with it than I can with cards and dice. Doesn't make cards and dice worse, but for me to do something like a McGreevy League, oh my God, I'd have to be like so wealthy to be able to do, even just taking players. If every player was carded from 1880 to 1919, it would cost a fortune. But yet I can fire up any one of these digital baseball games that I have. I don't know how many I have, and I could recreate that league in anything. And so I love the fact that Robert comes on and gives his opinion. And I wish we could get more cards and dice players on the channel to talk. You guys seem to be more reticent. So to close out before we give Chris and Aaron the last words is this. The idea of this community is this is not about digital baseball. And if you're not a digital baseball fan, go elsewhere. It's not about that. It's for pragmatic reasons, cost. It's also, I literally don't have the room for a footprint, or I would have a webcam on my hands, and I would even show you guys a little sleight of hand during the game and stuff like that. I don't have the room for a game like Status Pro has got, well, I don't do tricks, dude, just magic. Other people do tricks, and they're the ones that look good in fishnets and stuff like that. And dogs do tricks. But anyhow, my point being is I would do it, but I also have two cats that are extremely playful. So I've
heard them before.
I am trying to find ways to kind of, I want the cards and dice guys to really, really feel welcome here, to the point where we no longer have to at least use, or I have to use the term digital guys versus cards and dice guys, because we are all, at the end of the day, we love baseball, we love simming baseball, and whether you play strat cards and dice or you play out of the park digital, we are all at least together in a community that I hope can agree to disagree, and Robert knows this, but I just don't want him to feel that it was like, okay, no, you suck because you play cards and dice. No, far from it. I love following Robert. I do. In fact, his postseason starts tomorrow. So I wanted to say that, but also on the other side of the coin, what Chris does with Out of the Park Baseball is brilliant. Creating these amazingly huge leagues. What Legends does with MLB The Show, making it a sim, is fantastic. What Dwayne does with all his myriad projects, the World Series projects that he does, his pre and post bat season, what Ken Castro rolls up, guys, it's all equal. There's not one that's over the other. So please don't, from that little discussion that we had earlier, which was civil, please don't go away thinking this is a playground, just, this elitist thing that you got to play digital baseball. It's not about that. I can't play it in the current living situation that I have. And I appreciate one and all everybody. We topped out tonight at about 18 or 19, which for, this size is pretty good. And, having Chris on here, having Robert on here, or certainly having Aaron on here, you guys, your comments. And I don't care about building this channel. This is our community. This is a place where we get together. You're making comments. It might help the YouTube algorithm or not. I don't give a shit about that. What I give a shit about is the guys are coming in here, can talk about games, talk about what they're doing. John DFW, talking about Drive for the Pennant and things like that, which, by the way, is a fun game mode of Out of the Park Baseball. But if you come on here and tell me, hey, man, I wrote up an APA game today and da-da-da-da-da, that's as compelling. I really, really hope you guys will consider being more open about that. The cards and dice guys. This isn't that. And also, just to remind you, to go back to the Saber games and simulation community, join up, talk about your replays there if you don't want to do it here. You're going to find kindred spirits out there. And so with that, Christy, I don't know if you have anything to add or just to close out.
No, you put it perfectly.
Thank you, my friend.
I don't think I can follow that up.
Yeah, I come in because people are great human beings. That's why I come in. If you were doing something about Bushkazi, I would probably watch Bushkazi too.
Right.
Bushkazi's that game where they cut the head off the goats and throw it around horses.
Yeah, as a vegetarian and animal rights guy, I'm probably not going to watch that. But,
you're not gonna, But what I meant is, if you're doing even, I don't care. Let's think of something boring like golf. Okay.
Right.
I would still be in here because it's so much more, and I think it couldn't be golf because the thing with baseball is we talked about the connection before, so it's a one stream and a one sport where it makes sense to start off with a game, to go and talk about the largest finite number possible, which is tree 3. And
amen,
then
brother.
Talk around different things, and then we go back, and then the game, because that's what you do at a baseball game. It's the connection.
It's the connection, and also giving Sean his word of the day. He loves the word of the day. So every time in a broadcast, sometimes like tonight it was litigious. So Sean got it, and he loves that. I love hanging out with you guys. It's awesome. And by the way, Carlos Yaz comes in at the end. He says he might be chatting about goat heads and such. So Chris, I got off for that week in June. I've just got to hop a Greyhound bus and get over to the Berg, and either you or Ken can meet me over there. That would be awesome.
Yeah,
but you and Ken and I can talk about that through Facebook or whatever. However,
let's make sure we're good on that, because it'll be a logistical thing. That'll be the first weekend I'm back.
Mm-hmm.
I have to get my tooth drilled on the 4th.
Oh shit. Okay.
So that's only in the morning though, 12 noon.
Okay. All
easy. So any night game would be good.
Yeah, we might have to take Ken to a club too. You know what I'm saying? Ken.
Yeah, the Bridge Club. Yeah, the old ladies hear about Ken. They really want to meet him. They really do.
Taking the strip district for some good food.
I set it up Aunt Edna's Bridge Club right there. They're all waiting.
So Carlos Yaz, he's hitting it up here. He's trying to save you some money, Chris. He says that tooth drilling can be done in house.
Oh, I should show you that picture.
Chris.
In Rawalpindi, there's a guy.
Hey, Carlos.
Rawalpindi, there's Islamabad and Rawalpindi. Rawalpindi is the less affluent, I would say, part of Islamabad. So in Rawalpindi, it is just people everywhere. It's an old city. It's very rustic, put it that way. And there was a guy that one of our teachers got a picture of, and he's sitting there, and it said, "Dennis, 200 rupees, which is 60 cents.
Right.
And it had literally had a spoon and a rusty fork.
Oh God.
On this thing, and a pair of pliers.
Oh no.
And on this wooden thing. And it said, "Dennis, 200," and this guy was dead serious. He wasn't like joking.
Yikes.
And I'm like, oh, maybe I should go there for a checkup.
You know what, man? I'm all about multiculturalism, but that one I'd have to do a hard pass on, brother. I'm telling you.
That same way. That and yeah. So
give me some good curry and give me some good paratha and all that, and I'm good, brother.
Here is amazing. The food here is really good. I love it. Lots of beef, lots of stuff in it.
There you go.
But you're right. There's some things I might need to pass on. All right.
Guys, I want to thank everybody, this community. Again, it's just about I look forward to this on Saturday nights. I know I do games during the week, but Saturday nights to me is such a highlight. And to have these two authors on with us tonight was super, super cool. You know, we're gonna have another, maybe when Chris is back here in the time zone, one of the most remembered broadcasts we ever did, because I actually had to run and do something, and Chris ran the damn thing for a while, but it was awesome. We kind of gave Chris the open mic, and it was brilliant. So we hope to have you back on. I'm going to get Sean on here again, and just all you guys. You guys are family to me, man. I'm a stranger in a strange land, and to be able to connect with you guys, talk about baseball, even when we disagree, it is still. When we're talking about baseball, it's all good, man. Yeah. And Aaron, you're like you talk about these game moments. I'm like, what? And I've got to go look at them again in Baseball Reference. Everybody in this community, and so in education, Chris will already know this. So we have a term we call constructivism. And that's what we've created in this community, right? Because the best way you learn is by a whole bunch of people. It's a constructivist learning community. And it has, and friendships have been formed by that. But I have learned so much more about baseball. And certainly, we've talked about Tree 3 and gangster movies and everything else, because God knows where a Beatles Eternally broadcast is going to go. And because nothing's right. But I look forward to you guys being here. Carlos, usually last one at the gate, at the end, at being Carlos, to the guys that are here first, to Nathaniel coming in, and how he's just, all you guys bring something amazing. And I hope there's times I'm going to screw up, guys. There's times I'm going to screw up, but I hope that I never do anything to mess up this great community that we've built within this channel, but also across all the other channels. You know, there's not a lot of cross-pollination. I'm hoping that we can do more of that like, you know, I showed a game of Tim's, Clee Baseball Fan 879, a few weeks ago. I'd love to get Al Red Sox's permission to show one of his games on here. You know, it's a little harder for him. He's monetized, so that might be harder.
Don't worry about messing up. I mean, one of my next projects is going to be Drunk Cricket. I'm going to get myself.
Oh no!
So what I'm going to do is, I found my limit is about 6 Budweisers, and so what I'm going to do is just do that and try and do a long cricket game.
So you're talking test cricket, not T20, right?
Yeah, test
God.
cricket. I want to do the MV style.
Sean's up for Drunk Cricket. You already got a fan.
I'd watch that all day long.
Drunk Cricket, and that's what I want to say, because I'm going to see people I don't know. I'm going to try and figure out the game, like the nuances, and I'm going to have no filters.
Well, Chris,
yeah.
nobody can ever, and I say this as a compliment, nobody can ever accuse you of having fillers, brother. Guys,
And
thank you very much. Oh, go ahead,
Yeah.
Chris. Finish what
oh
you're
no,
going
I
to
was
say.
going to say, and I work in schools, but
And you work
anyway.
in schools, which is really cool because Chris knows that I tend to curse a bit. But if I know Chris is on in the morning and I'm doing something or on my morning, I will clean it up. But Chris is kind of introduced his kids that he teaches when I have a baseball for Windows on there, which is really nice. That makes me feel good. It's like, cool. But we guys, my other mission, while I have Chris here for just one more minute, I realize, guys, there's a huge time difference between where Chris is and where most of us are. But
Yes, 11
please,
a.m.
please subscribe to his channel and catch his games. It's fun. And again, as far as baseball goes, you're going to feel like you're listening to the real thing. Chris's love for the game is awesome. His channel. We got to build that channel, guys. Subscribe. You got a moment. You're trolling around YouTube. You want to hear some good baseball or whatever other sports. Chris does a lot of stuff. He does that. He has a States project in football. Just check it out. Chris is such a good guy. Same with Aaron. We got to build this community across all of these channels, and guys like Legend Sports Universe still doesn't have enough subscribers. And I'm not talking about all of us getting monetized. I don't want that. But it would be nice to see us all kind of create a more cohesiveness so that we can get better with the constructivism. And with that, that is it. Too long to go back and thank everybody, but I thank you all. And go ahead, Chris.
Open the window. Is there a pod of us that we don't know about? Like another like, maybe there's somebody right now doing the same thing that you're doing with another 500 people. Maybe it's not Beatles Eternally. Maybe it's Rolling Stones Forever or something like that.
Right.
The same sort of
Yardbirds.
and we just don't know about it yet. We haven't connected the two worlds yet.
We do. I do know one thing. I'm going to bet you I've honked off a lot of Beatles fans. Now, I mean, they're the reason I'm a musician, but I've got to think people are like, oh, there's a Beatles Eternally channel, and then they look and it's all baseball. So, right? It's all baseball. And it's like when I started this shit, I'm like, I have to pick a name. I don't want to use my real name. I'm like, okay, I mean, pretty much everybody here knows my name. But the thing is I'm like, okay, I'm a Beatles fan, Beatles Eternally, and it became its baseball channel. So I know there are people out there pissed. It's like, damn it. I was looking for like the latest Sir Paul McCartney news, and you're showing a fucking Yankees game. So, whatever.
I think I met you on Twitch like a few years ago, Beatles.
What's that?
Were you
me? Twitch? No. Fuck no.
Or it sounded
I was a member, but I never did anything on Twitch.
Oh, okay.
No, dude. No.
Somebody that sounded a little like you said he was a little different, but he was doing. I think he was playing one of the early MLB.
So he was as bad as me then, and which is good. I take pride, and I'm not looking for false praise. I take pride in being the shittiest broadcaster in this community. I love it because I don't pretend to be a broadcaster at all. Why do you think I go off on tangents, dude? Seriously.
Oh, wait, so you're Kirk Aldy? Are you saying that you're Kirk Aldy now?
Pretty much, except without his.
Hey,
I'm Kirk Gowdy, man. Let me break out my hat, my whatever he wore, but I don't pretend that. I mean, I leave the good stuff to like you and Legends and Our Red Sox fan and Dave Little, the guys that sound like broadcasters. I'm just going to come on. I want to bullshit with you guys. I look at the chat more. I don't know how many times people say in the comments, Beatles, Ricky Henderson has aged like 5 years because you've been talking about everything but the game. One night we went off on mob movies in like the 5th inning of the game. We just started talking about mob movies. And so
the game in pitch by pitch most of it go longer.
I think the reason why I have the subscribers here, it's not about that I know shit about baseball or I can call a game. They want to find out, okay, what's going to be the Beatles Eternally train wreck for the night. And that's what it is, man.
I used to come in here.
You came in here because you wanted baseball for Windows. Don't get me started.
It'd be the most random. It's like, oh, it's baseball for Windows. Oh, let's see who's playing who. And it's like, Braves at Dodgers or Senators at somebody or Go-Go Sox, and whoever's like, oh, nice.
So see, here's, but here you go. So like, I disappointed midlife crisis. He said, I discovered Beatles late one night jonesing for some baseball. The subtext is he didn't get it. I'm sorry, brother. Some night I'm going to call a 9-inning game and it'll be over, and you guys will be like, he did a whole game, and he didn't like.
What the hell? A whole
he
game.
didn't go off and like, ooh, shiny things, but don't hold your breath. Don't hold your breath. Gentlemen,
All right,
thank
I'll see you later.
Yes, see you guys all around the batting
Good
cage.
night. Good night,
yeah, be some baseball tomorrow.
Yeah.
All right, good night.
Good night.
Good night.